At that time, mankind was on the brink of extinction, including the evil god Vindrake, who appeared in the sky all of a sudden. There were a lot of monsters creating havoc on the land. The strongest mages were the last hope who could stand against the evil god and get rid of the monsters creating havoc. They kept attacking each other and fighting with various spells, with the monsters creating havoc while the mages had the aim of eliminating them. The leader of the mages, Setsuna, asked his colleagues to prepare their magic spells. They were all ready with a barrier on their hands as they began casting spells and screaming fire, creating the barrier. The leader faced the evil god Vindrake and told him that he was going to be finished there. The mages were all chanting as Setsuna, who was also focused on casting his spells and holding the barrier, told them to combine all 6 magic attributes and fire at the same time. His spells brought about a lightened, bottled-like object, causing an elemental burst. One of the mages screaming admonished the other mages to support Setsuna, as they all made the elemental burst more frightening. Being relaxed and happy, one of them smiled, unknown to them, that made the evil god more angry and dangerous. "No way," a mage said. "Let's hit him harder," as they noticed the evil god was not yet eliminated. Everyone kept striking, but Setsuna suggested they had to observe. As their spell was reaching the evil god, he dispelled it, making Setsuna wonder. The evil god, clenching his jaws, asked if that was what humans could do, calling them foolish and miserable creatures, rotten insects who rotted in his garden. A female mage screamed that there was no way their magic was not working on him, as the other mages kept looking as if they were astonished. She asked Setsuna to give them his order. Setsuna kept thinking that there was something they could still do. They all kept trying various ways to bring the evil god down, as one of the mages was running out of mana. Worriedly, he brought Setsuna's attention to it, telling him his mana was getting exhausted. That made the demon lord attack him as he kept crying for help, asking Setsuna to save him. Setsuna cast a spell, opening his palms with lightning and trying to attack the evil god, but he got flipped out by fire, making him sustain many injuries. Setsuna was bleeding from all parts of his body. The evil god now behind him said that that was a futile struggle. Setsuna said not yet, as he said something like he was casting a spell orally, making an incantation, bringing about another lighting. Setsuna punches the demon god, but Vindrake blocks Setsuna's punch, leaving some damage on the evil god. The evil god groaned as he crossed his arms around his chest. Setsuna, looking at his hands, said it worked. He wondered how such low-level magic, as he had thought, could cause damage to the evil god. He was still staring at his hands, and the brightness of them said he could defeat the evil god with them. The evil god spoke again and asked him if that was as far as he could go. The evil god attacked him as a necklace was shown on his chest, which was given to him by his headmaster in school. He remembered it in school. He held the necklace, glancing at it. The necklace was called the Necklace of Rebirth. His headmaster told him the necklace held the power of the spirit in time. He had the power to redo his past regrets only once. He had asked his headmaster if the necklace wouldn't be a waste on him, as he had never had any regrets. The headmaster laughed in his seat, as he had expected from the top graduate of his magic academy. He stood up, placed his hands on his shoulders, and told him that he was sure he would need it in the future. So, glancing at the necklace, he screamed regret and said his regret was that he didn't pick that magic at that time, saying he would definitely win against the evil god that time around. He was taken back to when he was in the Magic Academy 10 years ago, thanks to the Necklace of Rebirth. He was in class and saw Leo, who was supposed to go missing, before the evil god appeared. He looked around and confirmed that it was the Magic Academy, which he had really gone back to 10 years ago. He then proposed in his mind that he wouldn't let the defeat happen again. He was determined to win against the evil god. The circle of friends was in the ceremony of blessings, and it was his turn next. Setsuna walks up to the teacher to find out his blessing. Setsuna was a very famous person at school. A guy and a lady were whispering to each other as the male student asked if he wasn't the greatest genius of history in the academy. The lady replied that she heard he had the magic affinity for every magic path. It was time for him to choose a magic path. He was told that there were different paths in magic, and in order to activate magic, different techniques were required. That was why one had to choose a magic path, due to which learning of different magic from different paths is difficult. He was asked to choose the path he desired, and the trainer thought his choice would be long-range magic, as he pointed to it, saying that that would be his choice, right? Setsuna knew that was the right choice, as he became the strongest mage in the world with long range, and it was enough to defeat enemies. But he knew it didn't work when he was using it on the evil god. He chose close combat magic, leaving everyone amazed, including Leo, whom he had told earlier that he was going to pick long-range magic. Cyrus Arclight, who was the head of the long-range magic department, tried to give him reasons to change his mind as he informed him that that path was mainly focused on enhancement, meaning he could only attack enemies that were close to him. He told him that the magic path had long been abandoned. Cyrus asked him if he was going to just throw away his future with a worried and bittered expression. Setsuna said he knew all that, and it was hopeless as a mage with such a magic path, but that was the only choice one had in order to defeat the evil god. And in order to get that, he stretched forth his hands, clenched his hands, and chose close combat magic so he could defeat the evil god. That left everyone surprised, including the headmaster. Setsuna was glancing at the close combat magic symbol inscribed on his hand. Cyrus was disappointed. He said he had the intention of entrusting him with all his knowledge. If he had chosen long-range magic, he would have been the strongest mage. Cyrus said that glory was promised to even him, who was Setsuna's mentor. Setsuna thought within him that such a thing as glory would surely be useless in the next 10 years when humanity's defeat would happen, as he began to remember all that had happened, and also the 5 years until the evil god would appear. As Setsuna walked alone, he started thinking about how he could develop the close combat magic before the appearance of the evil god, as he hardly had any practical experience with the magic. All second-year students who had completed the rite of acquisition were asked to proceed to their respective field classrooms. Setsuna realized he didn't know where the classroom of close combat magic was located. He couldn't find Leo, so he went to the guy and lady who were whispering to themselves about him to show him the way. They tried to isolate themselves from him as they pretended to be late for class and left him there alone. They continued whispering on their way that it was over for Setsuna, as he would surely learn his lessons for choosing such a field to stand out. Setsuna realized that because he chose close combat, the treatment was different from the last time, so he had to find it himself. As he continued thinking, he said that there should be a map of the entire campus in the courtyard, so he walked towards the courtyard. As he was going, he heard noises of people fighting, and he wondered how a fight could be happening in a place like that. Moving forward, he saw 3 guys fighting against a lady. The guys were from the long-range department, while the lady was from the close combat department. The guys took a brooch that was precious to the lady, given to her by her mother. Already bruised, she kept shouting at the guys to give back her brooch. A fat guy among the guys standing at the left side stared at the brooch and asked if that brooch was a magical tool for storing mana. The one in the middle held a fireball, looking sternly at the lady. The last guy said the brooch was too good of a class item to be used by commoners like the lady. He said they would surely make good use of it. Setsuna was watching all this while, and got to know which classes they belonged to. The guy with the fireball told the lady that if she wanted it back, she would have to take it back by force. He threw the fireball at her, but the lady dodged it. She stood up with full force, stating the fact that she would never hand over the brooch her mom saved money for years to buy for her. She magically created a blade that was circled. Setsuna wondered how she could create a mana blade with close combat magic. The guy with the fireball saying that the dagger was not going to have any effect on him. She flipped up and magically attacked them. One of the guys said no matter what she did, the dagger wouldn't get to them because they were long-range mages. They attacked with a fireball again, and as she was about to fall, Setsuna came and carried her amidst the fire. This surprised the guys, and they looked to see who it was. Setsuna, still carrying the lady in his arms, asked her if she knew where the close combat magic department was because he wanted someone to guide him there. The guys kept looking, and one of them asked if that was not Setsuna Crownwell. They noticed the back of his hand and knew that he chose close combat magic. This made the guys think that was the perfect way to beat him up as much as they could since he was in the close combat magic department. One of them magically held a fireball, ready to attack. While Setsuna was watching, he noticed there was room for improvement. He had the thought that the quality of a magic field doesn't really determine the outcome of a battle. The lady noticed he was about to fight against them. She warned him to stop it as they were seniors, but it was too late as the senior student has already launched his fireball spell towards Setsuna. On the other hand, Setsuna, and he was focusing the magic on the legs, using the physical boost only for leg strength. He was really fast, and he believed he could also dodge their attacks. He had it in mind to do more. While they were fighting, he asked the other guys if they couldn't use any other element as they were only shooting fireballs. This angered one of them, as he asked him to shut up. The guy kept wondering what elements he was using, as he couldn't aim well. He was launching his fireballs with rage this time around. Setsuna magically made a blade and sliced all the fire away. The guys were surprised that it could be sliced. Setsuna responded that it was because it was magic against magic, and the one with the higher magic proficiency wins. He also said the reason he, who didn't have high magical powers, became the strongest mage in the world was because of his precise control of power. The guy who seemed to be the leader said he would use an extra large one if that were the case. The other guys warned him that that could catch the attention of the instructor, but he didn't heed what they were saying and told them to shut up. The guy began incantations, but Setsuna using his combat skills could reach the guy faster than his incantations. Setsuna then made a mana fist, hitting the guy so hard. The guy fell, hitting his back on the floor as he screamed. This made the others watch in shock with their mouths wide open. Setsuna, clenching his fist, said that, as expected, he could fight properly even with close combat magic. The fat guy among them told him to stop joking around, saying that close magic was supposed to be the weakest. Setsuna, stretching his hand, told him he was forgetting something. The fat guy handed over the brooch to him, saying to himself that he had to obey him for now. He and the last guy assisted the injured guy in walking away. Setsuna handed the brooch over to the lady, saying it was important to her. She was so happy as she thanked him, and then she remembered she hadn't introduced herself. She introduced herself as Layla Rosewill. She stretched forth her hand. Setsuna also shakes her hand introducing himself, but the girl stated she knew him to be famous for his affinity for all magic paths. They shook each other with both hands. Layla asked why he chose close combat magic. Setsuna thought to himself that was because that would help him defeat the evil god, but no one would believe him. Then he asked if Layla could show him the way to the department's building for close combat magic. Layla suddenly exclaimed, remembering that the orientation for the department would have started already, so they needed to hurry. On their way, Layla told him that the department's building was located at the edge of the campus because close combat magic was unpopular. She called out to him and said he had to teach her how to make the mana blade from earlier. Setsuna told her that was nothing special as it depends on the control of mana, and Layla confirmed herself that close combat magic could be used depending on the circumstances. Setsuna said if he could master close combat magic, then he should be able to counter the dispel of the evil god. He remembered when he had a conversation with the headmaster. The headmaster had shown him his hands, in which two symbols were inscribed. Then he was surprised because it was impossible for one to have two different magic paths. One is supposed to take only one path based on norms. He recognized the magic on his right hand to be the summoning magic, but he couldn't fathom what the left hand was, as he hadn't seen such before. J.E. remembered he had asked the headmaster what that seal was, but his headmaster said he would tell him when the time came, as the headmaster was sure he could entrust him with the secret of his second magic. Unfortunately, he couldn't learn it because the headmaster was assassinated after the emergence of the evil god. He could also sense the danger posed by the headmaster's second magic path. He was determined to learn it and change the fate of destruction. Still in his thoughts, Layla pointed to a building saying over there, snapping him out of his thoughts. But he kept thinking of how he would get the headmaster's recognition, as he already was. That seemed like a problem to him. The professor was standing at the doorway, ready to scold them for coming late. The professor, gritting his teeth with his hands crossed, said how nice it was for him to come late, along with a woman calling him by his full name, Setsuna Crownwell. Layla tried explaining, but the teacher said he didn't care about their excuses. He said no matter how good his achievements were, he was worthless at that place, referring to Setsuna. He also added that now that he was in the department of close combat magic, he was already trash, pointing his hands to Setsuna's chest. Setsuna grabbed his hands and told him he had been rude. He told him that he was the professor of the department, and he did not find any pride in the close combat magic that he was teaching. The professor was angered and held his shirt, calling him a brat, and how dare he act that way against a professor? Setsuna faced him and said that there were still undiscovered possibilities in the close combat magic. He so much believed that. The professor widened his eyes and called him a cheeky brat. He moved away, heading in a direction, saying that if Setsuna was going to say that, he was going to show him something instead. He brought Setsuna to places where students were having tests, and the students were struggling with making a crack on a rock. That was the first test needed to determine one's rank in class. In those black steel rocks, there was a crystal embedded in them, so they needed to extract it as soon as possible, and those who failed would be punished. The professor was walking around and told those taking the test that it had been an hour, and none of them had been able to break it. The students were all complaining, saying the stones were hard. One asked how she could be able to break it with the magic she had learned so far. The students criticized him behind his back, saying he was pissed off because he wasn't chosen to be promoted. The professor said there was still a free rock pointing at a rock. He asked Setsuna to show him the possibilities of close combat magic. He placed his hands on the rock, telling Setsuna that he had only 10 minutes. Layla exclaimed that it was just 10 minutes because it was impossible to break a black steel rock in just 10 minutes, and their rock was much bigger than the rest. The professor held a stopwatch, informing them they had only 9 minutes left, and they were still arguing. Setsuna placed his hands on Layla's shoulders and moved back towards the rock. He placed his hands on it and didn't say anything. The professor mocked him and said he was now speechless, but if he could just bow his head and apologize, he could consider giving him more time. Setsuna refused his offer, saying that 10 seconds was more than enough. Layla called him reckless. The professor told Setsuna that the black steel wasn't just big but also had high density, and even he couldn't break the rock after 30 minutes. Setsuna said he would show him. He had this determination to get recognized by the headmaster, and the only way he could do that was to be the best in his class, and he couldn't let trivial things like breaking a rock hinder his goal. He magically created a blade. The professor thought he didn't know what he was doing and mocked him, saying that he was just all talk after all. He was still talking about what punishment he would give him for disobeying his professor when he got interrupted by the shattering of the rock. The professor was shocked as Setsuna handed him the crystal. Setsuna told him it was 10 seconds. The professor's mouth was wide open. Layla was surprised that he really did it. The other students kept wondering how he could break the huge rock. They were thinking that maybe he was stronger than the professor. The professor opened his mouth and said there was no way he would admit it and that it was cheating. He said the rock was so hard that it wouldn't even shatter in 10 minutes, and if he could do that, it was obvious he cheated. Setsuna said if he could use 10 minutes on a rock like that, it would be better if he quit being a professor and started over again as a student. The professor clenched his fist when the head professor, Lionel, who was smoking behind him, called him Zachary. He placed his hand on the professor's head and asked if he was bullying students again. He told him that Setsuna didn't cheat at all. All he did was read the flow of mana within the rock and aim for the weakest point in it. He scolded Zachary, saying that he was trying to act like an instructor and couldn't see through that. Professor Lionel told everyone that he heard that Professor Zachary was going to demonstrate the mana guard. Professor Zachary was scared and shivered. Professor Lionel steadied his ground and faced Professor Zachary. Professor Zachary kept shouting and asking that Professor Lionel wait, acknowledging the fact that he acted wrong. He promised never to do so again. Professor Zachary launched at him with a fist, creating a barrier. Setsuna noticed the way he broke through the mana guard and knew his level of power was that of a guard. He wondered who that person was, as he didn't seem to be ordinary. Professor Lionel faced Setsuna, complimenting him as he patted him on the back. He told him to do his best. Setsuna told the professor that just because he was a close combatant, he would lose to other departments. He assured the professor that he would use the strength of close combat to his advantage and become the top of his grade. The professor smiled, telling him that's quite some spirit he got. He told Setsuna that if he ever wanted to learn magic, he should just say the word, and he would teach him. He introduced himself officially as the head professor to Setsuna and welcomed him to the close combat department. The The professor addressed the students and told them that they were about to decide on the representative for the exchange match, though he hated to say that so soon. The exchange match was a major event where the 8 magic departments competed for honor and prestige. Just one representative would be chosen from each department, and the winner would be determined through a tournament format. Before Setsuna's regression, he won the exchange match as the representative of the long-range combat department. That was how he earned recognition from the headmaster. Since he also wanted to be recognized by the headmaster, he couldn't afford to miss out on the representative position, as that was what determined if he could participate in the exchange match. As the other students faced Lionel, and Lionel told Setsuna that he wasn't the only one who passed the test, and there was someone who had extracted the crystal before their arrival. That person was Drago Okred. Drago faced Setsuna. He asked Setsuna what made him choose close combat, despite the fact that he had aptitude for other magic paths. Setsuna told him he had things to be done with close combat magic. Drago asked him to keep quiet, stating that Setsuna had a small stature and wouldn't be able to do anything with that. He clenched his fist and squatted, saying that his family's lineage had excelled exclusively in close combat magic for generations, so he had spent years training his body for that same purpose. Drago attacked Setsuna, but Setsuna, as he didn't even budge. Drago told Setsuna to fight him because he wouldn't let the representative position go to a mere pretender who came to close combat as a joke. Setsuna suddenly remembered that he had heard the name Drago during the representative match before the regression as the only man known to the lowly close combat department. He agreed to have the fight with Drago. Professor Lionel informed them that the match would be after a week. Drago told Setsuna not to think of escaping during that week because, as a close combat mage, one has to fight till the end. The other students kept pondering who would win. A lady asked that no matter how much talent he had, he would not be able to beat Drago, right? Layla went to meet Setsuna and asked him if he could win. Setsuna said no, making Layla scream. He said he couldn't beat him with his trained physique, and he couldn't compete with him in his current state. He said he had a secret plan as he was walking away. Layla called out to him, asking him where he was going. He kept walking through a pathway until he got to a tree. Layla asked him where that place was. Setsuna said it was a secret spot that only he knew of, and at that place, he would become 3 times stronger as he raised his hands and green aura moved over him. Setsuna said it seemed he was being recognized by the tree again as he noticed the aura surrounding his body. Layla asked what the green aura meant, and he said it was the blessing of the sacred tree. He added that it was only given to those who had been acknowledged by the sacred tree, and thanks to mana attributes, he could recover his mana by facing the tree. He said he had found the tree before his regression, and as long as he was at that place, he had no worries about running out of mana. He was determined to train there until he met his limits. Layla was amazed at this, but she reminded Setsuna that Drago was a natural-born close combat mage. Layla thought that Setsuna helped her get her brooch back, so it was now her turn to help him. At the close combat department training room, Layla found Drago using magic to lift weights, as she was surprised. She thought to herself that he was really the odd one. Drago asked Professor Lionel if those black steel rocks were still in the yard. The professor asked if he had the intention of crushing the rocks. Drago stood and moved towards the door as he waved to the professor, telling him he wasn't going to break the rocks but just wanted to borrow them. Drago arranged 5 black steel bars on his back and did push-ups. Layla gets shocked to see Drago's training and rushes towards Setsuna to tell him about everything that Layla saw about Drago's training. Setsuna was sitting down in a quiet place, reading the book of martial arts. She ran up to him and told him that was not the time to be relaxed, informing him of what Drago was currently doing. Setsuna said he had expected that, as it was already obvious he would do that to train his physique. He told Layla not to worry, and that was also part of his plans as blue aura showed in his eyes. Layla wondered what the plan was, and he told her that one has to focus on the hands if one wants to boost the hands, and the same with the legs. If you also want to boost memory, you do the same with it. Just by focusing on the head, you would age the techniques in your head, and once you put them into practice, it would make it easier. He was focused on fighting, and Layla was amazed at this, as she had not heard of a method to learn fast. He felt dizzy, fell down, and sustained a little injury. He said he was merely pushing his bodies to the limit with a physical boost, and he was just focused on boosting his healing. He kept assuring himself he could strengthen his body in a short time. Layla told him that he didn't need to push himself so hard and he could look for other methods, as she asked if there were other ways. Setsuna said there was no way, and he couldn't keep up with Drago with half-baked methods, considering the fact that Drago had been training for years in close combat magic. He said he needed to destroy and reconstruct methods thousands more times in the space of the remaining week. Layla gets shocked hearing this as Setsuna mentioned it 1,000 times, because just a single cycle was already painful. Setsuna thinks that it wasn't like that, as Setsuna thought about the time when Setsuna was young, and when every time Setsuna was training, he always reminded him of that time, and at that time, he couldn't use any magic. Every day, he spent his time practicing. Even when he failed, he kept on practicing, and even if his growth was slow, he got better step by step. That made him sure that, as long as he could get stronger, that was nothing. They kept on practicing, and his hard work made Layla know that he had really been working harder than anyone. On the day of the match, both of them faced each other, and Drago mocked Setsuna, asking him that so that he wouldn't run away. Setsuna said he wouldn't run away after all. He was the representative for the close combat department. Professor Lionel asked if they were ready as he stretched his hands, signaling for a start. It started as both of them were ready to launch against each other. Setsuna launched a powerful attack against Drago, summoning magical lightning to strike his opponent. In response, Drago positioned his hands defensively, deftly maneuvering to counter Setsuna's powers. Within his mind, Setsuna contemplated that Drago was using a mana guard to absorb everything he threw at him. Drago's stance was firm. He clenched his feet into the ground, and his expression was anything but friendly. As the confrontation continued, suddenly, he released his hands, unleashing his aura and surged forward, forcing Setsuna to raise his hand and shield himself. From a distance, Layla called out to Setsuna, her voice filled with worry as she watched the battle unfold. Among the audience, a guy remarked that the combatants were really going overboard. The crowd was taken aback, and someone voiced their astonishment by asking if Setsuna and Drago had really been promoted. Setsuna, his expression stern and focused on Drago, stated that a direct hit would spell the end for him. Drago continued his strike with a variety of attacks, each more unpredictable than the last. Despite this, Setsuna did everything in his power to evade the strikes, dodging with all his might. Drago, his eyes wide with a mix of frustration and curiosity, demanded to know why Setsuna was so intent on defending against his attacks. He questioned what was wrong with Setsuna, unable to understand his opponent's strategy. Yet, Setsuna remained silent, his only response being his relentless dodging. Drago then asserted that, in the end, Setsuna's body was still weak, and that this was evidently his limit. Layla thought to herself as she watched the intense battle unfold, reflecting on how despite all the rigorous training Setsuna had undergone, he was still no match for Drago. She couldn't help but feel a mix of concern and frustration. Meanwhile, Professor Leo observed the confrontation with a calm demeanor. He studied their movements carefully, analyzing their techniques and strategies. Even when it seemed like Setsuna was being overwhelmed by Drago's relentless attacks, he managed to block Drago's strike using his mana fist. Professor Leo noticed something significant at that moment. He realized that Setsuna was skillfully deflecting all of Drago's attacks using precise mana control, a technique that demonstrated his growing mastery over his powers. Drago's anger was palpable as he spoke, venting his frustrations. He accused everyone of looking down on close combat, dismissing it as inferior to other forms of fighting, and referred to them derogatorily as elites. Drago recounted how he and his father had been born into a family that excelled in close combat, emphasizing the countless humiliations they had endured because of this bias. His voice filled with determination, he vowed to change his fate with his own hands, magically conjuring a blade that shimmered with power. Setsuna, unfazed by Drago's declaration, gripped his own blade tightly and stared keenly at his opponent. The air was thick with tension as the two warriors prepared for the next phase of their duel. They engaged in a fierce exchange, each demonstrating a variety of styles and techniques. The clash of their blades echoed through the arena, showcasing their skills and the intensity of their rivalry. The audience watched in awe as Drago and Setsuna battled with relentless energy. It became increasingly clear that Drago was overpowering Setsuna, using his superior strength and combat prowess to gain the upper hand. The audience began to whisper among themselves, predicting that it was over for Setsuna. They believed that since he had chosen the magic path merely to stand out, he would surely learn his lesson now. As they murmured, doubt and speculation spread like wildfire. Placing his arms around his face for protection, Setsuna acknowledged within himself that he could understand Drago's words to some extent. However, he questioned Drago, asking if they weren't aiming for something greater than their current confrontation. Drago, taken aback by this question, felt a moment of dismay, but they continued their intense fight. With a sudden surge of energy, Setsuna boosted his physical speed and launched another attack against Drago. Drago, finding himself with no other option, dodged by crossing his arms over his face for protection. Observing this, Layla smiled and commented that Setsuna's strategy was working. The professor, watching keenly, thought to himself that although Drago's offensive and defensive skills were remarkable, Setsuna's control over his powers and his physical growth were extraordinarily impressive. He pondered who would ultimately emerge victorious in this fierce battle. Setsuna, realizing the formidable nature of Drago's defense, concluded that he needed to create an opening. With this in mind, he attacked Drago with all his might. Drago, perceiving the intensity of the strike, thought that Setsuna was expending all his mana in a desperate attempt. The battle raged on with increasing ferocity, each combatant pushing their limits. Eventually, Drago managed to corner Setsuna, feeling a sense of triumph. He thought to himself that he had finally cornered Setsuna, believing that from this position, Setsuna would not be able to use his agile footwork to escape. As the tension peaked, Drago attacked Setsuna once more, and Drago was taken aback by the afterimage left in his wake. Setsuna explained that by concentrating his mana at the point where he was standing, he could briefly leave an afterimage, a technique he had perfected to confuse and outmaneuver his opponent. He then launched attacks from all angles, his movements swift and unpredictable. At one critical moment, he declared with unwavering confidence that this was the end of their duel. Everyone was awed by this unexpected turn of events. Professor Leo reflected silently, impressed by Setsuna's strategy. He realized that Setsuna had aimed for a counterattack, cleverly taking advantage of the fierce strike to turn the tide in his favor. The professor also believed that both fighters had performed exceptionally well. With a gesture of his hand, he declared the program over. He then announced Setsuna as the winner of the duel. The reaction from the audience was mixed. Some students were surprised by the outcome, while others were genuinely happy for Setsuna. Among those celebrating was Layla, whose joy knew no bounds, clearly overjoyed by Setsuna's victory. Meanwhile, Drago lay on the floor with his head bowed, groaning in pain and frustration. His defeat was a hard pill to swallow. A student in the crowd, with a look of astonishment, asked if Drago could still stand up after taking such a powerful hit. Another lady in the audience remarked on Drago's toughness, noting how resilient he had been throughout the fight. Drago thought to himself in disbelief that it couldn't be over. He pondered that the final blow from Setsuna's mana blade had been carefully adjusted to avoid being fatal. Setsuna walked up to his fallen opponent. With a gesture of camaraderie, he offered his hand to help Drago up. Drago looked up at Setsuna, his expression a mix of exhaustion and curiosity. He asked Setsuna to tell him one thing. He asked Setsuna what he was fighting for. Setsuna explained that his goal was to never lose to anyone and to ensure that nothing was ever taken away from him. He added with determination that he wanted to be stronger than anyone else, to protect everything he held dear. Drago acknowledged Setsuna's strength and determination, standing up with the aid of Setsuna's outstretched hand. As they clasped hands, Drago admitted that he had been completely defeated, addressing Setsuna by his full name, Setsuna Cromwell. He added that Setsuna had truly lived up to his reputation, demonstrating exceptional skill and resolve. In his mind, Drago contemplated that such power could be incredibly valuable in the upcoming battle against the evil god. Professor Leo, observing the interaction between the two fighters, commented on Drago's performance. He remarked that despite Drago's prowess in close combat, he had lost to Setsuna. Then, in a formal gesture, Professor Leo lifted Setsuna's hand high and announced to everyone present that Setsuna had been chosen as the representative of the Close Combat Department, marking his victory and recognition. A few days later, Professor Leo and Setsuna were walking down a long hallway toward a large, imposing door. As they walked, the professor spoke to Setsuna, explaining that it was now time for the representatives to meet face-to-face for the exchange match. He offered Setsuna some advice, though it came across as rather odd and peculiar. Nevertheless, he urged Setsuna to comport himself appropriately. Setsuna, on the verge of stepping forward, acknowledged the advice with a simple "okay" before proceeding into the room. As Setsuna entered, a murmur of surprise rippled through the audience, prompting a mocking remark questioning if representatives from the Close Combat Department were also participating. The individual whom Setsuna was slated to face made a pointed comment about Setsuna's willingness to confront his own shortcomings. Observing the emblem on his opponent's hand, Setsuna surmised that the person must be the representative of the Enchantment Magic Department, indicating a formidable adversary. Turning his attention back to Setsuna, the opponent, referring to Setsuna as the Mr. Lowly Grunt Department's representative and pointing an accusatory finger at Setsuna's chest, he proceeded to question Setsuna, insinuating that the Close Combat Department had not produced any notable achievements in the past century. With a sneer, he disparaged Setsuna and his colleagues as a worthless bunch, suggesting that they should confine themselves to the periphery of the school grounds, endlessly honing their physical prowess until their eventual demise. He was in the midst of making a statement when Setsuna purposefully stepped on his feet, eliciting a groan of discomfort from him. Setsuna, with a hint of sarcasm, remarked that it seemed they had a rather unique way of greeting each other in the Enchantment Magic Department. He continued to press down on his opponent's foot, causing him to cry out in pain, while Setsuna maintained his hold with a wry grin, his frustration evident in his voice. Setsuna conveyed to his opponent that despite the Close Combat Department's lack of victories in the past 100 years, such history was irrelevant in the current situation. With unwavering confidence, Setsuna declared that this year would be different, firmly asserting that the Close Combat Department would emerge victorious. The guy, visibly agitated, pointed an accusatory finger at Setsuna, demanding that he cease speaking nonsense and face reality. Just as tension peaked between the two, the headmaster entered the room, having overheard part of the conversation. He acknowledged the passion displayed by both sides, but reminded them that the true determination of superiority would be determined by the upcoming match itself. Before the headmaster could address them further, Carol stepped forward. With a sense of reverence, she expressed her gratitude at meeting the headmaster and pledged to showcase her abilities with utmost dedication at the forthcoming inter-school exchange match. Setsuna couldn't help but reflect inwardly on Carol's unwavering friendliness. Despite hailing from the summoning department, Carol's demeanor remained constant, a testament to her character. Memories surfaced of Carol's past encounter with a formidable opponent during the exchange match prior to the regression. Though Carol emerged victorious then, Setsuna understood the importance of caution in the upcoming matches, knowing the unpredictable nature of such competitions. As the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation, the headmaster took center stage. He began by extending heartfelt congratulations to each participant for earning the representative rights of their respective departments. His words conveyed genuine delight at the gathering of such exceptional talents. Transitioning to the specifics of the event, the headmaster reiterated that the inter-school exchange match would adopt a one-on-one tournament format, with opponents determined randomly. Each match would serve as a test of skill and resilience, offering participants the opportunity to showcase their abilities on a grand stage. The headmaster commenced the announcement of each matchup. The first pairing, he revealed, would feature the Close Combat Magic, renowned for its expertise in hand-to-hand combat, against the Enchantment Magic, known for its ability to bestow mana upon objects and life. The clash between these contrasting styles promised to be both thrilling and enlightening. Moving on to the second match, the headmaster described the contrasting forces at play. On one side stood the healing magic, capable of performing miracles and providing crucial support to allies. Opposing it was the long-range magic, adept at neutralizing enemies from a distance, preventing them from closing in. The third match of the exchange match showcased the intricate dynamics between formation magic, renowned for imbuing various powers within magic arrays, and summoning magic, celebrated for its command over mythical beasts from distant realms. This clash of abilities promised to be both enlightening and exhilarating. In the fourth match, attention turned to the enigmatic realm of special magic, which defied categorization, facing off against alchemy magic, renowned for its ability to permanently alter substances. This matchup offered a fascinating juxtaposition of mystical forces, each with its own unique strengths and applications. As the headmaster addressed the gathered participants, he underscored the significance of the exchange match as a practical lesson in the diverse realms of magical study. He emphasized that the forthcoming matches would not only test their skills, but also deepen their understanding of different magical departments. With the exchange match scheduled to take place in just 10 days, the headmaster granted the participants the freedom to choose between honing their existing magical abilities or exploring new avenues of magical study. His words were met with a mixture of anticipation and determination. As the participants prepared themselves for the challenges ahead, Carol's enthusiastic reaction resonated with the collective excitement of the group. In a gesture of respect, they all bowed to the headmaster. Seizing a moment alone with the headmaster as he departed, Setsuna saw an opportunity to address him directly. Calling out to the headmaster and following behind, Setsuna awaited his attention. When the headmaster stopped and turned around, Setsuna stepped forward, ready to engage in conversation. With a sense of purpose, Setsuna introduced himself as the representative of the Close Combat Magic Department. Setsuna introduced himself with a respectful demeanor, stating his full name as Setsuna Cromwell before proceeding to make a request of the headmaster. With a hint of anticipation in his voice, he inquired if the headmaster would be willing to impart further knowledge about magic should he emerge victorious in the upcoming matches. In response, the headmaster, taking into account Setsuna's specialization in close combat magic, expressed initial skepticism about the relevance of teaching him summoning magic, dismissing it as potentially unnecessary for Setsuna's skill set. Undeterred, Setsuna clarified his request, specifying that he was referring to a different type of magic altogether. The headmaster, visibly surprised by Setsuna's request, widened his eyes in astonishment. He questioned Setsuna about how he had come to possess such knowledge. Reflecting on the headmaster's cautious demeanor, Setsuna found it to be quite overwhelming. Yet, he remained steadfast in his determination, recognizing the vital role of the second magic in confronting the threat of the evil god. With this in mind, he felt compelled to press forward, unwilling to retreat from the challenge at hand. With a firm tone, Setsuna addressed the headmaster, articulating his belief that the victory of the close combat department after a century-long drought could potentially defy the conventional wisdom of the world. He urged the headmaster to entertain this possibility. The headmaster, scrutinizing Setsuna, couldn't help but wonder if there were ulterior motives behind Setsuna's request. Eventually, he relented, conceding that upon Setsuna's victory in the championship, he would impart knowledge of the second magic. Grateful for the opportunity, he expressed his heartfelt gratitude to the headmaster. However, the headmaster cautioned Setsuna, reminding him that the path to mastering the second magic would be arduous. Undeterred by the challenge that lay ahead, Setsuna tightened his grip on his cloak, symbolizing his unwavering determination to succeed and prove himself worthy. As the headmaster prepared to take his leave, he commended Setsuna for his unwavering spirit and resolve, recognizing the fire burning within him as a testament to his determination to overcome any obstacle. The scene shifted to where Setsuna sat on a bench, enjoying a loaf of bread. He found himself reminiscing about the monotony of his school life after a decade and how the abundant free time felt rather dull. Nevertheless, he savored the delicious bread, grateful to Layla for recommending it to him. Once he finished his meal and remained seated, Setsuna contemplated the mere 10 days remaining until the event. He felt a strong urge to prepare diligently. Then suddenly a golem strikes at Setsuna with incredible force, but Setsuna was able to block the golem's strike using his mana fist. Setsuna noticed Noel, his upcoming opponent, lurking behind a nearby wall. Noel confessed his intention to strike Setsuna from a blind spot, prompting Setsuna to suspect Noel's use of golems infused with mana through enchantment to animate the rocks. Addressing Noel directly, Setsuna questioned the purpose behind his behavior. Noel dismissed their encounter as a continuation of their previous meeting, asserting that there was no need to wait for the exchange match. Referring to Setsuna disdainfully as a mere close combatant, Noel clenched his teeth in frustration. Noel confronted Setsuna, accusing him of daring to embarrass him. He began gathering materials, evidently preparing for a confrontation with Setsuna. Undeterred and equally prepared for a fight, Setsuna retorted that Noel's current predicament was a consequence of his own actions. Noel, having infused mana into various rocks, positioned them strategically behind him, signaling his readiness to engage Setsuna in combat. However, Noel's confidence wavered as he realized the potential consequences of injuring a participant of the exchange match, even a close combatant like Setsuna. Concerned about the repercussions, Noel dispersed the rocks and warned Setsuna that he would be well prepared for their upcoming match before turning on his heel and departing. Left to ponder Noel's abilities, Setsuna marveled at how Noel could provide mana to such a large amount of matter while simultaneously controlling it. Despite their rivalry, Setsuna couldn't help but acknowledge Noel's talent and considerable prowess. The following day, Professor Leo addressed the students, announcing that the day's topic would focus on preparing them for the upcoming event, starting with an analysis of the recent battle between Drago and Setsuna. He addressed Drago and Setsuna, inquiring if they comprehended their respective shortcomings. Setsuna affirmed his understanding. The professor gestured for Drago to speak first. Drago admitted to losing control of both mana and emotions. Setsuna, in turn, acknowledged his lack of fundamental power and his dependence on Drago's sheer strength. The professor commended their self-awareness, emphasizing that recognizing one's weaknesses was the initial step towards growth. He urged them to commence their improvement immediately, starting with that day's match. Interrupting the discussion, Layla raised her hand and queried if the upcoming match would serve as training for the exchange match. The professor acknowledged the significance of her question and proceeded to provide details about their opponent for the first match, Noel, hailing from the enchantment magic department. According to Setsuna, Noel utilized multiple golems for both offense and defense. Expounding on this, the professor highlighted the similarity between golem combat and close combat magic due to the physical nature of golems. Delineating their tasks, the professor instructed Drago to focus on speed, particularly while simulating the movements of multiple golems. He would attack from all angles, informing Setsuna that he would deflect Drago's attacks and counter them. Drago, poised to strike, assured Setsuna that this time would be different from the last. Setsuna responded, expressing anticipation for the challenge ahead. Drago charges at Setsuna, ready to strike with his mana fist, as Drago strikes at Setsuna on the right, but Setsuna dodged the strike, and as Drago was about to counter, Setsuna predicted that Drago would strike from his left, but to Setsuna's surprise, Drago strike at Setsuna from right again. As Setsuna was barely able to block Drago's strike, he inwardly criticized his slow reaction speed. Professor Leo praised Drago, commending him for balancing speed and power effectively. Meanwhile, Setsuna anticipated Drago's next move, predicting a left hook. Drago launched a successful attack, prompting Setsuna to realize that his previous move had been a feint. Professor Leo applauded Setsuna's astute judgment and instructed him to evade with a step and counterattack, which Setsuna executed flawlessly. Exhausted, they both rested on the floor, with Drago acknowledging the intensity of the match. Professor Leo, impressed by their performance, gives both of them bottles of water. He assured Setsuna that in a few days, he would be capable of handling being surrounded by 4 to 5 golems. Setsuna emphasized that no matter how much training Setsuna underwent, he shouldn't let his guard down. Following that, Professor Leo observed that Setsuna absorbed everything with a single command, noting Drago's understanding of the basics of close combat while acknowledging Setsuna's exceptional sense. Now, it was time for the exchange match. The venue was prepared for the 781st Elmridge Magic Academy exchange match. The question lingered among the representatives from the 8 magic departments. Who would emerge as the strongest? Setsuna and Noel stood at the center of the audience, facing each other. As anticipation filled the air, Then the commentator states that the exchange match stage will be changing randomly each time, and this time, it was set in a desert. Noel expressed his approval of the setting. From the crowd, someone raised their hand and cheered for Noel to defeat the close combatant swiftly. Another person chimed in, expressing satisfaction that Noel was pitted against the perceived underdog department. Layla intervened, shouting at the noisy individual and asserting that they should closely observe whether they were truly underdogs or not. Layla stand up, and she continued to confront the individual until Professor Leo stepped in to restrain her. With the preparations complete, the match was declared to begin as the commentator raised his hand and announced the start. Noel addressed Setsuna by his full name, Setsuna Cromwell, while holding a black steel rock and questioned if Setsuna knew its significance. Setsuna responded affirmatively, identifying it as a black steel rock, crucial for creating a golem by combining it with sand. Suddenly, Noel infused his mana into the black steel rock, causing it to transform into a golem. It possessed immense strength, impervious even to the sharpest blades. Then Noel takes out more black stones, and in an instant, a dozen of golems come surrounding Noel. Mockingly, Noel remarked to Setsuna that his chances of victory were slim, estimating them at 1 in 10,000. Layla, surprised by this turn of events, pondered the possibility of facing numerous golems. Noel explained that these golems could be endlessly created from the sands, making it difficult for Setsuna to approach him. A guy remarked that the outcome of the game had been predetermined even before it began. Another nearby individual shouted at Setsuna, advising him to surrender for his own sake. Noel addressed Setsuna by his full name, indicating his readiness to listen to anything Setsuna had to say. Setsuna, in response, found the situation boring, as he hadn't anticipated this to be Noel's trump card. Angered and wide-eyed, Noel questioned Setsuna's remark, then gestured to his golems, commanding them to overwhelm Setsuna. Suddenly, a dust cloud enveloped the area, leaving the audience bewildered as visibility dropped. Setsuna magically conjured a sword and proceeded to destroy the black steel rocks. He confidently declared that he had already mastered handling the black steel rocks. Noel, feeling frustrated, Noel tells Setsuna that he has already mentioned before that he can create as many golems as he wants. To prove his point, Noel creates a dozen more golems, and these newly formed golems join together to launch an attack on Setsuna. In response, Setsuna confidently states that in close-quarter combat, his ranged magic is the most powerful. He asserts that no matter how many golems Noel can create, Setsuna will never be defeated. With incredible speed and precision, Setsuna swiftly takes down the golems with a single, powerful strike. In an instant, he closes the distance between himself and Noel and punches him squarely in the face, remarking that it was an unfair match for Noel from the beginning. Meanwhile, the audience is unable to see the details of the battle because of the thick dust cloud obscuring their view. As the dust begins to settle, an audience member spots a solitary figure standing amidst the debris. It is revealed to be Setsuna, the last one standing. With the dust now cleared, the announcer declares Setsuna the winner of the match. Setsuna quietly acknowledges his victory, reflecting on his triumph in the first battle. Layla, witnessing Setsuna's success, felt elated and proud of his achievement. Meanwhile, the group of students who had earlier mocked Setsuna found themselves surprised by the unexpected outcome. One among them questioned if it was all just a joke, while another pondered how long it had been since the close combat department had last emerged victorious. Deep in thought, another individual wondered aloud if continuously summoning new golems would eventually lead to exhaustion. Another lady remarked that Noel had essentially self-destructed in his relentless pursuit of victory. A guy responded to her, stating that Setsuna shouldn't have been able to win, thus concluding that the close combat department was simply lucky. Cyrus, who had been observing quietly, interjected, asserting that it wasn't merely self-destruction on Noel's part. Hearing this, purple-haired guy stated that Setsuna has caught his attention. As the competition continued, it was time for the second match. Setsuna moved to sit in the audience, where Layla praised him for his performance. She asked if he intended to watch the match, gesturing for him to sit beside her. Setsuna agreed, stating that by doing so, he might find some references to use in the future. Meanwhile, the ongoing match pitted the summoning magic department against the formation department. Carol, the representative from the summoning department, currently held the upper hand, while the representative from the formation department attempted to close the gap. Sitting and observing, Setsuna contemplated the unfolding events. He noted that despite being pinned down, the formation department's representative displayed impressive movements. He also considered that perhaps he could replicate those movements and apply them in close-quarters combat. Layla remarked that the movements from other magic paths looked impressive as she watched the match intently, but she expressed her desire to become stronger in close combat magic. Setsuna saw this as an opportunity to inquire why she had chosen close combat magic. He asked her about her reasons for selecting it, mentioning that there were other paths available. Layla closed her eyes. She recounted a past experience where she had been saved by a close combat mage long ago. She remembered playing with her little brother in the forest when suddenly they were attacked by a grizzly bear. Feeling hopeless, a close combat mage intervened to rescue them. Since that moment, her dream had been to master close combat magic. She explained that her motivation stemmed from wanting to protect those around her and to become stronger. She questioned Setsuna, wondering if her reason sounded childish. Setsuna reassured her, stating that he didn't think her reason was childish at all. He also assured her that as long as she held a goal in her heart, she would gradually grow stronger. Leo approached from behind, greeting Setsuna and remarking that it had been a long time since they last met. Setsuna pondered Leo's presence. Leo Foray Elmcrest, his full name, ranked second in the long-range department, just after Setsuna. Leo rested his hands on Setsuna's shoulders, acknowledging Setsuna's strength displayed in the first match despite employing close combat magic. He then teasingly inquired if Layla was Setsuna's girlfriend. Confused, Setsuna asked him what he meant as the first match of the second round was about to commence. Pitting long range against close combat, Setsuna and Leo prepared to spectate. Layla starts to blush upon hearing this and leaves the arena. Then Setsuna tells Leo that he never expected Leo wouldn't become the representative for the long-range department. Setsuna states that Leo should easily be able to defeat Akhtar, the purple-haired guy. Leo tells Setsuna that it might sound like an excuse, but he warns Setsuna to be careful against Akhtar, as Leo was fooled by Akhtar and lost the representative's spot to him. Hearing this, Setsuna thinks that Akhtar is the type of guy who would do anything to win and realizes that he can't let his guard down. Then we see Akhtar smirking, looking at something he had prepared for the match against Setsuna. The chosen stage was the Scorching Hell, where a misstep meant certain defeat. Drago sat beside Professor Leo, expressing his concern over the difficulty of approaching the opponent on such terrain. Professor Leo concurred, noting the stage's advantage for the long-range combatants. Meanwhile, Cyrus told Akhtar to impart a lesson to Setsuna, vowing to make him regret choosing close combat. Setsuna took a seat beside a table with a vase placed on it. He cautioned Layla against touching the vase, explaining that it was a contact-triggered magic tool. Setsuna further stated that it might completely drain her mana if triggered. Angered, Layla asked why he kept such a thing there. Setsuna revealed that it was a trap specifically aimed at him, making it the seventh one. Layla, taken aback, questioned if he was okay with having traps around. Setsuna reassured her, stating that he had managed to avoid activating them, so there was no problem. Internally, Setsuna speculated that Akhtar was likely the culprit behind the traps. He acknowledged Akhtar's cunning nature, noting that he left no evidence behind. Just then, someone knocks at the door. As they went outside, they encountered 3 children. They presented Setsuna with a bouquet, addressing Setsuna as Big Brother. Layla inquired about the gesture, prompting the boy among them to explain that someone had asked them to deliver it to Setsuna, gesturing towards a direction. Layla questioned if Setsuna had a fan who could have delivered the bouquet personally. The boy tells Layla that the Cinder found it embarrassing to deliver it themselves. Then suddenly the girl starts feeling dizzy. Setsuna noticed some spots on the girl's neck, recalling having seen them several times on the battlefield before his regression. Realizing what it was, he angrily kicked the bouquet away. Layla, concerned, inquired about the situation. Setsuna explained that it was poisonous grass called venenum. The boy continued coughing, and soon all 3 of them collapsed to the ground. Setsuna instructed Layla to stay away due to the high probability of infection from the poison. Layla retrieved her brooch, which stored mana, and told Setsuna to entrust the children to her. Her mother had embedded a healing magic spell within it, and she starts using the healing magic. Setsuna observed that the spots were already fading, which he relayed to Layla. Layla remarked that although her mother had given her the brooch for emergencies, this was indeed one such case. Setsuna expressed his deep gratitude to her. He then stood up and collected the poisonous grass. He thought to himself that venenum grass was most toxic when it bloomed, realizing he needed to dispose of it before then. However, doing so in a crowded place would scatter the toxin. Already experiencing spots around his neck, seeking a quiet place at the sacred tree, he concluded it was the perfect spot for disposal. After disposing of it, the tree gets covered in green aura, and suddenly, he collapsed. At the match venue, Setsuna's absence prompted speculation and assumptions of him fleeing. Commentator announced over the microphone that since Setsuna hadn't appeared by the designated time, he would forfeit, making Akhtar the victor. Setsuna interrupted, shouting for them to wait, surprising everyone. He declared he wouldn't forfeit and was prepared to fight, challenging Akhtar. Seeing Setsuna's body being covered in spots, Akhtar mockingly asked Setsuna how he could fight in such a condition. Setsuna and Akhtar stand facing each other. Akhtar smirks and calls it a congratulatory gift for the first round, adding that it seems Setsuna has already accepted it. Setsuna, exhausted, asks if this is Akhtar's way of doing things, using deadly poison on innocent children. Akhtar pretends not to understand and claims there was no such thing. Setsuna grows angrier, but Akhtar only smiles wider, saying that Setsuna is far too passionate and that even the children should feel honored to be of use to the elites. The comment makes Setsuna furious, and suddenly, the commentator announces the start of the second round. Akhtar immediately casts Storm Bullet to attack, which Setsuna barely manages to dodge. Watching the fight, two teachers sitting nearby exchange worried glances. The red-haired student asks if something is wrong with Setsuna, noting that his mana appears completely unrefined. Meanwhile, in the lobby, the poison from the venenum grass has been partially purified by the protection of the sacred tree, but there wasn't enough time for Setsuna to cleanse the poison fully from his body. Akhtar keeps launching one attack after another, giving Setsuna no chance to recover. Before another blast can strike him, Setsuna leaps into the air to escape, but Akhtar isn't done. He predicts Setsuna's landing position and continues attacking, forcing Setsuna to dodge desperately. The commentator finds it amusing that the close combat fighter Setsuna is now completely on the defensive. The golden-haired man watching from the stands smirks, remarking that all the preparation was worth it and tells Setsuna to brace himself for humiliation. Setsuna glances toward the empty seat in the spectators' area, realizing that Layla still hasn't returned, and silently hopes the children are safe. Akhtar notices his distraction and smiles, asking if something is worrying him. Setsuna, too tired to reply, stays silent. The students in the audience begin laughing, saying that the close combat fighter Setsuna is just running away and clearly has no way to handle long-range opponents. Akhtar grins and suggests that Setsuna should withdraw from the match before attacking again. Seeing the incoming spell, Setsuna attempts to block it with Mana Guard, but his unstable mana control causes the barrier to collapse. The attack hits him directly. Setsuna's arms are covered with wounds. Akhtar bursts out laughing and points mockingly at him, saying that he's falling apart. Setsuna glares at him and asks why he isn't finishing the fight. Akhtar lets out a confused "huh," and Setsuna continues, saying that the best strategy would be to prevent close combat and overwhelm him with continuous long-range attacks. Yet all Akhtar has been doing is provoking him. He asks Akhtar what he's really planning. Amused, Akhtar replies that he never expected to be lectured on long-range tactics. Still, he compliments Setsuna's keen observation, admitting that Setsuna is not to be underestimated. Then Akhtar tells him to look around. Setsuna realizes he's standing on a narrow rock pillar surrounded by rivers of glowing lava. The golden-haired student gasps in shock, asking when Akhtar managed to set this up. Wickedly, Akhtar explains that he adheres to the headmaster's rule of avoiding unnecessary risks, and reveals that this had been his plan from the very beginning. Then, Akhtar uses Storm Cannon to launch a massive attack at Setsuna, making the red-haired student furious about the situation. It's Akhtar's final blow to end the match, but suddenly, Layla's voice echoes through the arena as she shouts Setsuna's name. He looks over and sees her holding up a pendant, telling him that the children are safe. Setsuna smiles in relief, his entire body glowing with mana as he declares that he doesn't have to worry about the kids anymore. Clenching his fist, he says it's time for his comeback. Akhtar looks stunned to see Setsuna instantly recover and demands to know how he did it. Setsuna channels his mana to form a blade and calmly explains that it's not surprising. It's simply an advanced application of physical boost. He reveals that he had been activating his cells throughout the battle, breaking down the poison while Akhtar was busy destroying his footing. Setsuna calls Akhtar a coward, saying that he fell for his plan. Akhtar grows nervous but tries to act confident, warning Setsuna not to get cocky because there's nothing he can do in this situation. The golden-haired man agrees with Akhtar, urging him to finish the fight. Akhtar charges up another attack and fires it towards Setsuna. Seeing the spell coming, Setsuna thinks about how little footing he has left and how scarce his remaining mana is, but he believes it's enough to take Akhtar down. He blocks the attack with his mana sword, yet manages to counter the blast. Akhtar is shocked beyond belief, and even the red-haired student is amazed that Setsuna repelled the attack. As the counter-strike heads toward him, Akhtar quickly nullifies it, mocking Setsuna for thinking he couldn't cancel his own spell. But when he looks at Setsuna's position, he suddenly realizes that Setsuna is right in front of him, ready to strike. Setsuna smirks and asks if Akhtar really thought he couldn't leap that distance. Akhtar starts sweating, unable to believe it, but before he can react, Setsuna's blade strikes him, sending him crashing to the ground. Landing gracefully, Setsuna tells Akhtar that if he wants forgiveness, he should seek it from the children. The commentator then announces the winner, Setsuna. Hearing that, the red-haired student smiles, but suddenly, the ground beneath Setsuna and the unconscious Akhtar begins to crumble, and both of them plunge into the flowing lava below. While falling, Setsuna realizes the situation is dire because Akhtar is unconscious. He tries to use his mana bound to his foot to save Akhtar from falling, but things look grim. With no other choice, Setsuna prepares to use a special ability, but before he can act, a white-haired girl summons her Fenrir, which swiftly saves both Setsuna and Akhtar. Seeing the Fenrir, Setsuna immediately recognizes it as Carol's summoning magic. The spectators erupt in cheers at the sight. The Fenrir lands safely on the ground, and Carol begins patting it affectionately while the doctor rushes to treat Setsuna and sends Akhtar to the infirmary. Carol smiles at Setsuna, saying that he owes her one now, though it seems he might have been fine without her help. Setsuna smiles back, telling her that's not true and that she really did rescue him. Afterward, Setsuna reflects on Carol. She's from the summoning department, a strong contender for the championship, and possesses both talent and composure. If she keeps winning like this, Setsuna knows he must be ready for a fierce battle ahead. The blue-haired students watching are shocked to see that the close combat representative, Setsuna, has won again. One of them wonders if it's just a fluke, but they're both worried. If this continues, it will be absolutely unprecedented. The scene shifts to the headmaster of the academy, who is impressed by Setsuna's performance. Meanwhile, the golden-haired teacher is furious with Akhtar. Later, after changing his clothes, Setsuna heads to the spectator area to meet Layla, who compliments him on a great fight. The red-haired student tells Setsuna that he heard about everything from Layla, adding that Setsuna really had it tough. Setsuna then asks Layla about the children, and she explains that they're resting in the infirmary for now, with the doctor confirming they'll recover soon. Hearing that, Setsuna feels immense relief and smiles, but suddenly, he senses a powerful killing intent from the arena. Startled, he quickly looks around, trying to locate its source. Layla notices and asks if something's wrong, but Setsuna replies that it's nothing. Still, he wonders to himself what that ominous energy was, the cold, suffocating magic filled with hostility. It makes him question what exactly is lurking behind the tournament. Later that afternoon, Setsuna trains alone, deep in thought about the upcoming final match in a week, and about that mysterious presence. The feeling makes him realize he needs new power to confront whatever lies ahead. While he's thinking, a black-haired teacher interrupts him, asking why Setsuna called him there. Setsuna replies that he's seeking his guidance once again and refers to the professor by his old title, Fist of Comet Lionel. The professor is taken aback by the name, saying it's been a long time since he's heard it, and asks where Setsuna learned it. Hearing that, Setsuna realizes it's really him and explains that he heard the nickname back in the Magic Corps before his regression. Fist of the Comet. The professor was a legendary close combat mage rumored to have defeated even ferocious dragons with a single blow. He had already left the army by the time Setsuna joined, so they never had the chance to fight together. Setsuna admits that he's been thinking about it ever since they met and bows deeply, begging the professor to teach him his magic. The professor smiles, scratching his head, saying it's been a long time since anyone called him by that name. Setsuna insists that it doesn't matter. Among all the close combatants he has faced, the professor is the strongest. The professor asks why Setsuna seeks more power when he's already strong enough. Setsuna replies that it's still not enough. He says he doesn't want to lose to anyone, not even to a deity. Hearing this, the professor chuckles and remarks that Setsuna is a very interesting student. He agrees to teach him, even though it's not a technique he would normally share with a body still developing. Then, the professor shows him the mana forming in his fist. Setsuna watches in awe as immense magical energy gathers around it. The professor explains that this is why he was once called Fist of the Comet, but it consumes so much mana that it can't be used repeatedly. Even so, he believes one strike is enough. He tells Setsuna to watch closely. After fully charging his mana, the professor launches a devastating punch that shakes the ground, displaying overwhelming power. Setsuna is astonished by the sight. The professor continues, explaining that this technique requires constant mana accumulation, making it unsuitable for one-on-one battles like tournaments. He asks Setsuna if he's still willing to learn it. Setsuna nods firmly, saying it's perfectly fine and that he's counting on him. Hearing this, Professor Lionel smiles and agrees to train him. He decides to begin immediately, telling Setsuna to follow him. The scene then shifts to Carol, who is meeting with a man congratulating her for reaching the finals. She smiles and thanks him. The man asks if she's confident about winning since her opponent is a close combat fighter. Carol smiles again and replies that victory or defeat depends on luck, but she'll do her best to make it a good match. She then asks if he'd like another cup. The man thanks her, so she gathers the cup and begins to take the tray away. But suddenly, the man pulls something from his pocket and uses it on Carol. A mark appears on her neck, and pain overwhelms her. She collapses to the ground as the man watches coldly, thinking to himself that if she wins, then so be it. But if the situation changes, he must be prepared. The scene shifts to Setsuna, who is practicing Professor Lionel's magic. He asks the professor how his performance was. Professor Lionel is astonished. He never expected Setsuna to memorize everything in less than a week. He reflects that it took him at least 2 years to master the same technique. After that, Professor Lionel praises Setsuna and informs him that he has successfully learned the Fist of Comet. Setsuna, drenched in sweat, feels immense satisfaction hearing those words. The day of the finals finally arrives, and all the students and professors gather in the arena. The commentator announces that the 781st Elmridge Magic Academy Exchange final match is about to begin. He introduces the fighters, the overwhelming favorite star, Carol from the Summoning Department, versus the rising underdog, Setsuna from the Close Combat Department. Among the audience, a student asks his friend who he thinks will win. One student confidently replies that the undefeated Summoning Department will definitely win. However, a purple-haired girl counters, saying that the Close Combat Department is strong too and admits she has become a fan of Setsuna. The children watching are also cheering loudly for him. The commentator then introduces the stage for the final match, the Ruins of the Goddess. To prevent any damage from the fierce battle ahead, formation mages have set up a powerful barrier around the arena. Watching this, Layla comments that it's finally a stage where Setsuna won't be at a disadvantage. Hearing that, Professor Lionel replies that he hopes she's right. Setsuna glances toward the headmaster, thinking that if he wins, the headmaster must keep his promise about teaching him the second magic. Seeing Setsuna's cheerful expression, Carol remarks that he seems to be in high spirits, then summons her companion and tells him to do their best. The commentator announces the start of the final match, prompting Carol to summon Fenrir. She mounts the Great Wolf and attacks, but Setsuna dodges easily, observing her abilities. Her attacks are of the freezing element, possessing the same properties as Blizzard. Impressed by Setsuna's quick movements, Carol compliments his outstanding footwork but declares she won't let him rest. She commands Finra to attack again. Setsuna activates Physical Boost X10 and skillfully evades all of Finra's strikes. Finding an opening, he closes the distance between them and forms a mana blade, striking at Carol, but Finra intercepts the blow, taking the hit for her. Layla, watching from the stands, assumes that Setsuna has defeated Finra, but Professor Lionel shakes his head, explaining that summoned beasts are condensed mana. Such wounds heal instantly. As he says this, Finra's injuries close in moments. Carol praises her companion, calling him a strong boy and saying he's done well so far. Then, both Carol and Finra look toward the sky and begin casting a spell together. Suddenly, the entire arena transforms into a frozen stage. Setsuna immediately realizes that the freezing mana has been trapped inside the barrier. A spectator in a student's uniform comments that in this frozen environment, Finra's attacks will grow even stronger, wondering what Setsuna will do now. Meanwhile, Setsuna analyzes the situation. With his opponent's range advantage and endurance, a prolonged battle would put him at a disadvantage. He decides to settle the match with Charge Bullet. Finra lunges forward, but Setsuna jumps high into the air, dodging the attack and closing the distance again. Some students watching whisper that the close combat representative Setsuna seems to be on the defensive, while others predict that defeating a summoner is impossible. The children in the audience look worried for him. Professor Lionel suddenly notices something and his eyes widen. Layla, seeing his reaction, asks if something is wrong. The professor smiles faintly and says it's nothing, but inside, he's realized that Setsuna is preparing to use Charge Bullet. He knows the technique requires time to charge and isn't ideal for one-on-one combat. Yet he believes that with Setsuna's exceptional mana control, he might be able to charge at mid-battle. Still, it's far from easy. Back in the fight, Carol wonders what Setsuna is planning and decides to interrupt him. She summons another creature, Garuda, a flying beast. The red-haired student watching gasps in surprise, and even Professor Lionel is impressed, commenting that she's very talented to perform simultaneous summoning. Now both summoned beasts attack Setsuna as he charges Charge Bullet. The impact of their combined strike kicks up a cloud of dust, making Layla anxious for Setsuna's safety. But when the dust clears, Setsuna stands unharmed, having repelled both beasts. With mana charged in both hands, Setsuna tells Carol that he already knows she's an exceptional mage, and that's why he anticipated she would have a trump card. Carol looks shocked to see that Setsuna has deflected all her attacks. Now, Setsuna's mana is fully charged in his fists. However, at that moment, a mysterious figure cloaked in dark mana declares that it ends here. He snaps his fingers, and the symbol on Carol's neck begins to glow and react violently. She screams in pain. Seeing this, Setsuna calls out her name, realizing that the overflowing dark magic can only be coming from one source, him. The ominous mana feels identical to that of the evil god, making Setsuna wonder what is truly happening. Meanwhile, Carol is doing her best to resist, to the point that she begins to cry. Her hands move on their own, gathering the ominous energy in the air and summoning more and more monstrous creatures. The spectators are astonished, counting aloud how many creatures she has brought forth. Professor Lionel places his hand on his head, exclaiming that the mana is clearly not being emitted by Carol herself. He immediately orders that the match be stopped and the barrier cancelled, angrily asking what the formation mage is even doing. But it turns out that the formation mage has already been knocked out by a mysterious student lurking in the shadows. The mysterious man smirks and says that the barrier can only be cancelled by the one who cast it, meaning they must be looking for the formation mage right now, who is already under his curse. The summoned monsters swarm towards Setsuna, who struggles to dodge their attacks. He tries to locate the true caster, knowing that the source of the mana must be nearby, so he focuses on tracing the flow of energy. Seeing this, the mysterious man moves his fingers mockingly and asks if Setsuna really has the time to look around in such a situation. A flying creature suddenly attacks Setsuna. Unable to block it, he is slammed into a nearby pillar and crashes hard onto the ground. Layla gasps in shock, fear written across her face as she watches Setsuna fall. Setsuna slowly stands again, determined to keep fighting. The mysterious man laughs, saying that locating the source of the mana while battling several summoned beasts is impossible, even for someone like Setsuna. With Setsuna's arms wounded and his strength waning, it's only a matter of time before the fight is over. Professor Lionel grows increasingly worried. At this rate, Setsuna won't have enough time to cast Charge Bullet, and on top of that, Carol is reaching her limit. If this continues, she'll lose control of her mana and possibly her life. Fighting the possession, Carol struggles to warn Setsuna to run away. Setsuna, still battling the monsters, hears her faint voice and realizes she might be under someone else's control. Carol keeps trying to warn Setsuna to flee before the summoned beasts kill him, but her hands move on their own, commanding the creatures to attack him all at once. Seeing his chance, Setsuna charges forward and punches one of the beasts. A bull-like creature charges at him next, but Setsuna braces himself, grabs it by the horns, and hurls it into the other creatures with all his might. The headmaster watches silently while Professor Lionel desperately searches for the formation mage. Setsuna's mana is already more than half depleted. It's a dire situation. Professor Lionel knows he must find the mage who cast the barrier as soon as possible. He frantically looks for them, all the while thinking that Setsuna must survive. Meanwhile, Setsuna is breathing heavily. Suddenly, a rabbit-like creature leaps forward and strikes at his thigh with a sharp attack. Layla screams in terror, and the students around her cry out that Carol has gone too far. Writhing in pain, Setsuna tries to stand but collapses to his knees. The mysterious man smiles cruelly, saying that now Setsuna can't use magic anymore. He orders the summoned beasts to finish him off. All the beasts rush in. Fenrir strikes and injures Setsuna's arm severely, causing him to cry out in agony. The scene flashes back to the past. Professor Lionel stands before his close combat students, asking if they know what the most important thing is to do in battle as a close combat mage. The red-haired man beside Setsuna answers that it's to subdue the enemy with a single, powerful blow. Setsuna answers that it's to minimize the damage received while closing the distance with the enemy as quickly as possible. Professor Lionel nods, saying both are correct, but adds that there's something even more vital: to have an unbreakable fighting spirit against all odds, and to always land a hit on the opponent. He then announces that their next training will be endurance, standing their ground while taking any attack head-on. The scene returns to the present. Fenrir was still holding Setsuna's arm down. Setsuna mutters that he's finally done it. Using his other arm, he channels a charge bullet and punches Fenrir with explosive force. The mysterious man's eyes widen in disbelief. He thought Setsuna shouldn't even be able to move that arm. Realizing what happened, he concludes that Setsuna allowed the injury on purpose, hiding the fact that he had been charging mana the entire time. Setsuna knows the summoned beasts are out of control, and if he shows them even the smallest opening, he can destroy them all in one strike. Both Layla and the red-haired student watch anxiously as Setsuna channels every last drop of mana into his fist. With a fierce yell, he unleashes Charge Bullet. The explosion of power obliterates all the monsters, sending Carol flying into the air. After defeating all the creatures, Setsuna notices Carol about to fall to the ground. Without wasting a second, he rushes forward and catches her heroically. Looking at Carol, who seems fine, he breathes a sigh of relief. He gently lays her on the ground and then stands back up. The students watching the match can hardly believe their eyes, whispering among themselves and wondering if it's real. Has Carol actually lost? Even the commentator is astonished by the result and announces that Setsuna is the winner of the match. It has been nearly a century since the Close Combat Department last achieved victory, and now they are the champions of the Elmridge Magic Academy exchange match. The headmaster smiles proudly, watching Setsuna's triumph. As Setsuna walks toward the center of the arena, he raises his hand in a victory pose, flashing a bright smile that makes the entire crowd erupt in cheers. The blue-haired student is in awe, saying he has never witnessed such a technique before, a strike so devastating and precise. Layla looks pleased, realizing that Setsuna truly won the match, and even the red-haired student praises him. Meanwhile, the The mysterious man watching from afar stares at the formation mage, murmuring that Setsuna managed to survive the ordeal, something he had half expected. He admits that he shouldn't have underestimated Setsuna's growth. Then, raising his hand toward the formation mage, a faint light glows from his palm as he mutters that he no longer needs the formation mage. However, the mysterious man suddenly stops when he realizes the academy has already pinpointed the location of the formation mage who cast the barrier. Deciding to flee, he releases the curse before vanishing. At the same time, Professor Lionel rushes to the location, hoping to find the formation mage, but he is shocked to see the mage barely alive. Professor Lionel realizes the situation is grave. Suddenly, the barrier around the arena collapses, and Setsuna immediately senses it, thinking that the barrier has finally been cancelled. Afterward, the headmaster steps forward and tells Setsuna that it seems Carol suffered quite a blow after all her summoned creatures were defeated simultaneously. Setsuna explains that Carol was under someone's control. The headmaster nods, agreeing that it must have been caused by a magical device, and instructs Setsuna to leave the matter to the academy. He then smiles, complimenting Setsuna for showing his true power and confirming that he will keep his promise. Hearing that, Setsuna smiles gratefully and thanks him. The headmaster stands up to leave, telling Setsuna to come to his chamber the next day. Once the match concludes and things finally calm down, Setsuna goes to the medical room to be treated by a healer. A brown-haired woman uses healing magic on him and then carefully bandages his wounds. She informs him that his external injuries should be fine for now, but his internal damage hasn't fully healed, so he needs to rest. Setsuna nods in understanding. After the treatment, he puts his shirt back on, and the healer steps aside. Suddenly, someone knocks at the door. It's Layla, the kids, Professor Lionel, and the red-haired student coming to visit. Layla asks if his body is all right, and Setsuna smiles, saying that he's fine now. As they can see, Layla beams with joy and congratulates him again on his victory. The red-haired student also congratulates him, calling Setsuna the pride of close combat magic. The children excitedly comment on how strong and cool Setsuna is. He enjoys talking with his friends and looks genuinely happy. After some time, everyone leaves, except Professor Lionel, who stays behind. He tells Setsuna that the formation mage survived, explaining that someone had attacked him and left him unconscious. As for Carol, she still needs rest, but is stable and will likely be questioned once she wakes up. Professor Lionel admits he suspects that this entire incident was targeted specifically at Setsuna and asks if Setsuna has any idea what's going on. Setsuna's expression suddenly changes. Later that night, the mysterious person tries to open a locked room, but is repelled by a protective barrier meant to ward off intruders. However, for him, the barrier is useless. He easily shatters it with one hand. He opens the door to Carol's room, thinking that he must eliminate Carol first and then Setsuna. The mysterious man intends to erase every trace connecting back to him. Just as he is about to use his powers to get rid of Carol, Setsuna appears, interrupting him. The intruder freezes in shock as Setsuna calmly declares that he already knew he would try to silence Carol by targeting her. The mysterious man sighs and says that he hadn't wanted to meet Setsuna under these circumstances. It is then revealed that the mysterious man is actually Leo. Looking serious and saddened, Setsuna faces Leo, who laughs and says he's already been exposed, even though he was sure he hadn't left any traces. Setsuna confirms that there were indeed no traces left, but after witnessing Leo's actions just now, he is completely convinced. Leo doesn't respond and instead suggests they talk outside, saying that the room smells too strongly of medicine. They head out of the dormitory, but along the way, Setsuna suddenly feels a sharp pain from his internal wounds, which still haven't healed completely. After walking some distance, Leo remarks that Setsuna's expression looks terrifying and then asks how long he has known that Leo was the culprit. Setsuna replies that after the ceremony of blessings, when Leo suddenly disappeared, he began to feel uneasy. Reflecting on Leo's personality, Setsuna felt something ominous. He also recalls the incident where Leo lost his position as the representative of the long-range department, something that made no sense. Even if Akhtar had used underhanded methods, there was no way Leo could have lost to him. Leo looks impressed, admitting he didn't expect Setsuna to piece everything together so accurately. Setsuna continues, saying that his suspicions turned into conviction just moments ago. Just like during the final match of the exchange competition, the same distinct mana signature was infused in Leo's attacks. Hearing that, Leo is visibly shocked. He walks towards Setsuna, his aura flaring, and demands to know who Setsuna is referring to, asking if he perhaps knows about that great person. The overwhelming pressure from Leo's mana makes Setsuna break into a cold sweat and gives him goosebumps. From the shape-shifting quality of that energy, he becomes completely certain Leo is a subordinate of the evil god. If that's true, then Setsuna knows he must stop him immediately. Leo smirks and says he can't let Setsuna do whatever he pleases anymore. Though he had hoped to play with him a bit longer, he says it's time to say goodbye. In the next instant, Setsuna charges at Leo, swinging his mana sword, but the moment the blade touches Leo's hand, it vanishes. Setsuna freezes, realizing the situation feels eerily similar to that moment before his regression, when all the heroes attacked the Demon King and their magic failed. Leo grins and reveals that he was granted authority over mana nullification by that great being, so no matter what kind of magic is used against him, it will never reach. Setsuna grits his teeth and attacks again, but Leo effortlessly nullifies the strike once more. However, Setsuna quickly observes something important. The nullification only activates upon contact. He decides to strike from behind, believing it could be a blind spot. In reality, Leo effortlessly nullifies the attack from behind as well, mocking Setsuna by saying it's useless. His mana detection is faster than Setsuna's. He then waves his hand, launching a barrage of fire magic toward him. Setsuna struggles to block it, and Leo continues attacking, saying that, in truth, he wanted to fight Setsuna once he had fully recovered. But when Leo sees Setsuna still standing despite the pain, he pauses, impressed. He smirks and says that Setsuna is truly remarkable. Most close combat mages never reach this level. If Setsuna had chosen long-range magic, Leo says, they could have played a bit longer. But now, it doesn't matter anymore. Setsuna will die here. Leo attacks again, this time striking Setsuna's wounded leg, forcing him to stagger and fall in agony. Setsuna glares at Leo and demands to know the reason behind his actions. Leo replies wickedly that he's simply tired of this world, comparing it to wanting to destroy a sandcastle built by someone else. Setsuna clenches his fists in anger, recalling how before his regression, countless people died as they were taken down by demons. Furious, he yells at Leo to stop fooling around and demands to know if he's really Leo. Leo responds by preparing another attack and tells Setsuna to shut his mouth. Setsuna realizes he's too far away to use the mana blade effectively and must strike at point-blank range as quickly as possible. He recalls the sensation from that final battle before his regression, when he struck the Demon King, and realizes he might still have a chance. He begins casting Charge Bullet, but before he can finish, Leo launches another attack, mocking him for being too slow. Setsuna is startled by Leo's unbelievably fast casting speed, wondering if it's the power of the evil god. Suddenly, a voice commands them both to stop. A white-colored magic barrier appears, blocking Leo's attack and saving Setsuna. Seeing the white flames, Setsuna is shocked, and then those same white flames surge forward to attack Leo. Leo raises his hand and nullifies the flames effortlessly. Setsuna looks upward and sees, atop the academy building, a massive dragon standing beside the headmaster of the academy. The headmaster, along with his dragon, lands on the ground near Setsuna. The headmaster apologizes for being late, but Setsuna assures him that it's fine since he has already saved him. The headmaster then turns his attention to Leo, saying that he is the one responsible for the incident during the exchange match. Leo, no longer surprised, remarks that it seems the headmaster has noticed it as well. The headmaster explains that he sensed the residual mana and followed the trail. Hearing that, Leo smirks and compliments him, saying that it's as expected of the top student of the Magic Academy. The headmaster responds that he never wants to suspect his own students, but as he speaks, a brilliant white aura bursts around him, its power so immense that even Setsuna braces himself against the pressure. The headmaster then decides to restrain Leo and orders the dragon to attack. The dragon unleashes blazing flame charges toward Leo with tremendous force, but despite the overwhelming power, Leo remains unharmed, protected by a powerful barrier he cast beforehand. Leo studies the attack and acknowledges the strength of the creature before him, the legendary white dragon, the strongest phantom beast he had only heard rumors about. He admits that without the authority granted to him by that great person, he would have been in serious danger. The headmaster realizes that the magic nullification Leo spoke of is indeed real. Setsuna, shocked, asks if the headmaster knows about it. The headmaster nods and explains that records of such power exist in his family's archives, the House of Silver Rock. He adds that, according to the texts, when the unknown dark powers awaken, the world will be engulfed in disaster, and mana nullification is one of those very powers. Leo suddenly breaks his defensive barrier and tells the headmaster that his magic won't work against him. He begins casting a new spell, preparing to attack. Setsuna is taken aback when he sees Leo manipulating 3 different magic elements simultaneously, forming complex compound spells. The headmaster closes his eyes briefly, and when he opens them again, they have transformed, radiating an entirely different light. Leo's magic continues to swell, the energy compressing into smaller and denser forms. Sensing the danger, the headmaster calmly tells Setsuna to take 2 steps to his right. Setsuna notices the change in the headmaster's eyes and quickly obeys, just as Leo's magic explodes toward them. Thanks to the headmaster's instruction, Setsuna dodges the attack perfectly. The headmaster also avoids the barrage with effortless precision, leaving Leo stunned. He had been certain his spell would strike without fail. The headmaster asks Leo why he seems so surprised, wondering aloud if Leo believes only his magic can work in this situation. Leo laughs, saying the headmaster has an interesting power, but he immediately begins charging another spell. The energy radiating from it terrifies Setsuna. He can sense the power of the evil god in Leo's magic. Leo declares that he won't leave a single trace of them behind and points his hands toward the headmaster and Setsuna. The headmaster comments that this battle won't be an easy one, while Setsuna realizes how dire the situation has become. If both sides fight at full strength within the campus, the entire academy could be destroyed. The headmaster calls Setsuna's name, and he quickly responds that he understands. The headmaster then begins casting his own spell, and countless butterflies of light appear around him. He raises his hand and asks them to grant him their wings. Instantly, the headmaster, Setsuna, and the dragon rise into the air, taking the battle skyward. Leo realizes the headmaster is trying to minimize collateral damage to the academy, but he smirks, thinking that it's only natural for someone in his position to protect his students. The dragon once again attacks. Leo counters with his own magic, and to everyone's shock, his attack nullifies the dragon's attack entirely, striking the dragon's face head-on. Believing he now has the upper hand, Leo taunts the headmaster, asking if he plans to surrender and hand victory to his student. The headmaster, unfazed, calmly replies that he has no intention of surrendering. After all, he still has one last thing to teach before retirement. As the smoke clears from the blast, Leo's expression shifts when he realizes something is wrong. Setsuna emerges, already charging a charge bullet. It's a surprise attack, using the dragon's body as cover. Leo is startled, but quickly casts a protective barrier to block it. Setsuna shouts that Leo relies too much on his borrowed power, saying that choosing close combat magic was the right decision, and he'll prove it with this one attack. Leo scoffs, warning Setsuna not to overestimate the strength of that great person. Setsuna pushes himself to strike the target faster and faster, aiming to enhance his mana with greater speed. With one final burst of power, he manages to break through the barrier and lands a powerful punch at Leo. A large cloud of dust rises and slowly settles, revealing Setsuna standing firmly in place. The headmaster smiles with approval, explaining that even magic nullification has limits when it comes to activation speed, and he compliments Setsuna for his sharp judgment. Setsuna had anticipated that the high speed of a direct attack could surpass the nullification's reaction time, and he now realizes that his decision to pursue this magical path was correct. Afterward, Setsuna approaches the headmaster, informing him that the issue has been resolved with this result. The headmaster praises it as a splendid technique. though he notes that they should first tend to their injuries. Suddenly, Leo speaks up, saying that he truly learned a lot, surprising both Setsuna and the headmaster. Setsuna immediately turns to look at Leo, who is already standing again and telling Setsuna that he has exceeded his expectations. Setsuna is shocked, wondering how Leo can still be on his feet after receiving such a powerful strike. Although Leo has clearly been affected, he gathers himself and unleashes an overwhelming surge of magic, declaring that it is now his turn. He sends that magic towards Setsuna. Setsuna quickly forms his mana blade to counter it, but even this time, the magic is nullified by Leo's attack. Setsuna takes a direct hit, is knocked through the air, collides with the wall, and falls to the ground. Worried, the headmaster immediately calls out Setsuna's name. Setsuna recognizes the type of magic Leo used, and his vision begins to blur as he starts to lose consciousness. Leo laughs lightly, remarking that even he can perform such a technique. Setsuna suspects that Leo may have combined long-range magic with nullification, and his consciousness slowly fades. The scene then shifts to the past, when Leo was practicing long-range magic as Setsuna stood beside him. At that time, controlling magic at such a distance was already easy for Leo, almost like performing a simple daily routine. Setsuna complimented him, though he reminded himself that he shouldn't remain idle either. Leo laughed at the praise and replied that hearing such words from the master of long-range magic made the pressure even greater. He jokingly asked whether he should take a shot, with Setsuna's head as the target. The scene transitions back to the battlefield, where Leo repeats that statement. Setsuna, confused, asks what he means, and Leo tells him to look behind him. When Setsuna turns, he sees a distressing image of one of his comrades being overwhelmed by monsters, and Leo's voice intensifies his sense of despair. However, it is soon revealed that this was all part of a dream sequence. Setsuna suddenly wakes up, trying to sit up, and Layla, who had been sitting beside him, expresses relief that he has finally regained consciousness. Looking around, Setsuna asks Layla where he is. She explains that he is in the academy infirmary and that he has been unconscious for 3 days. Setsuna becomes alarmed after learning this and grows even more distressed when he realizes he was defeated not just once, but twice, by the overwhelming power connected to the evil god. Layla grows concerned seeing Setsuna in such a shaken state. Suddenly, Setsuna remembers the headmaster and asks about him. Layla explains that the headmaster is likely in his chamber since all the teachers are currently in a meeting with him. Setsuna begins to rise from the bed, prompting Layla to ask where he is going. As he puts on his shirt, he tells her he needs to meet the headmaster to confirm something important. She warns him that moving around is reckless given how many injuries he still has. Setsuna gently places a hand on her shoulder, apologizing for worrying her, but insisting that he must go. The scene shifts to the headmaster's chamber, where he is concluding a meeting with the academy's trusted professors. As they prepare to leave, he tells them he is counting on their efforts. Lionel remarks that they are about to become very busy, and the golden-haired professor comments that being relied on by the headmaster still feels unusual. Just as they approach the door, Setsuna bursts in, opening it with urgency. The headmaster smiles warmly, expressing relief that Setsuna is awake and safe. But Lionel steps in, stopping Setsuna and remarking that he seems to have lost badly. Lionel adds that they can discuss it later and mentions that Layla and Drago were worried about him. After Lionel leaves, Setsuna approaches the headmaster, clenches his fist, and apologizes for disappointing him. He asks what happened after he lost consciousness, but before the headmaster can answer, Setsuna winces from the pain of his internal injuries. The headmaster urges him to remain calm, reminding him that he is still recovering. He explains that after Setsuna collapsed, Leo simply smiled and remarked that he had wanted to finish Setsuna off, but he had used too much mana for the day. Since the battle had been enjoyable, Leo didn't consider it a bad outcome. Suddenly, a mysterious phenomenon appeared, something forming within space itself, opening into another dimension. Leo chose that moment to depart, telling the headmaster that they would meet again in the future. The headmaster had wanted to stop Leo, but beyond the portal was something so unfamiliar and overwhelming that even he felt unprepared to confront it immediately. After hearing the entire account, Setsuna nervously explains that the eyes he saw inside the portal may belong to an unknown and possibly powerful existence. The headmaster interrupts, asking if Setsuna knows something about it. Setsuna hesitates, clearly unsure. The headmaster then firmly tells him that he wants to hear exactly what Setsuna knows. To earn Setsuna's trust, the headmaster removes his gloves and reveals the crest on his hand, explaining that beyond this matter, Setsuna is already familiar with this type of magic. He then urges Setsuna to tell him everything now, emphasizing that he genuinely wants to believe in him. Setsuna hesitates, unsure whether he should reveal the future in which the evil god brings ruin to humanity. Because Setsuna has returned from that future, he fears the headmaster might not believe such a claim. As he struggles with this conflict, prompting the headmaster to ask if there is a reason he cannot speak openly. Setsuna suddenly remembers something that may convince the headmaster, and he instructs him to examine the necklace of revival. The headmaster quickly checks it and discovers that the blessing of the spirit of time has disappeared. Shocked, he asks if this means the necklace's power was already used in an alternate timeline. Setsuna confirms it and reveals that 10 years from now, he activated the necklace's power due to deep regret. After explaining everything, the headmaster acknowledges that he now understands the future Setsuna described, one where he himself is assassinated and the evil god brings catastrophic destruction. He comments that such a future is difficult to believe without proof. However, he also understands that even with the spirit of time's power, returning 10 years into the past would only be possible if the user carried an overwhelming burden of regret. The headmaster stands, approaches Setsuna, and places a reassuring hand on his shoulder, telling him that he has endured a tragic fate all alone until now. He then assures Setsuna that from this point forward, he will stand by his side as a source of strength. Setsuna is deeply moved and gratefully thanks him, feeling relieved that he can now confront the evil god together with the headmaster, giving them a chance to prevent the world from falling into ruin. Following this, the headmaster suggests teaching Setsuna a second type of magic specifically to counter the evil god. He lifts his left hand and explains that this unique power does not belong to any existing magical system. It is called spirit magic. Setsuna becomes eager to learn more, and the headmaster smiles, telling him they should move to a different location. They travel to a large tree, a place the headmaster finds nostalgic because he once trained there many times. Setsuna is impressed and asks if the headmaster really practiced in that very spot. The headmaster explains that spirit magic merges an individual with a spirit by using mana as a catalyst, allowing the spirit's power to reside within the body. Unlike traditional magic systems, spirit magic allows a wide variety of combinations, which is its most notable feature. Setsuna is astonished that such a power even exists. Since demonstrating it is faster than explaining, the headmaster allows his body to glow, and a crest appears in his eye, similar to what Setsuna saw during the battle with Leo. The headmaster then suggests playing rock, paper, scissors. Setsuna is confused, so the headmaster explains that since he cannot spar with someone who is still injured, this game will be their method of demonstration. They begin, and in the first round, the headmaster chooses paper while Setsuna chooses rock, giving the headmaster the win. They play again, and this time Setsuna shows paper, but the headmaster shows scissors, winning once more. They continue playing repeatedly, and Setsuna grows increasingly worried because he cannot win a single round. The headmaster then explains that this ability is one of the powers granted by the spirit of time, a precognition ability that allows him to see a few seconds into the future. He further elaborates that various spirits exist in the world, each with unique abilities. For example, contact with the spirit of wind allows one to fly, while the spirit of water can grant the ability to slip through physical attacks unharmed. Imagining the vast potential of these spirit powers expands Setsuna's understanding far beyond anything he had previously imagined. Setsuna clenches his fist, thinking that if he can master spirit magic, he will be able to make far better use of close combat magic. The headmaster explains that using this magic requires forming a contract with a spirit, but there is an essential preliminary step before reaching that stage. When Setsuna asks what that step is, the headmaster decides to demonstrate immediately. He closes his eyes, and after a moment, his His entire body begins to glow with a soft white mana. Setsuna watches in awe, and the headmaster explains that the preliminary step is to become one with nature by clearing the mind. Since spirits exist throughout the world, the first requirement is to sense their presence. After carefully listening to the instructions, Setsuna attempts it himself. In his mind, he calls out to the spirits, asking them to lend him their strength so he can oppose the evil god. A leaf suddenly falls from the tree above, startling the headmaster and making him nervous for a moment. However, it soon becomes clear that Setsuna is unable to empty his mind and cannot sense anything at all. The headmaster gently suggests that this may be due to the resentment and tension within Setsuna's heart. Setsuna asks what he means, and the headmaster explains that to become one with nature, inner peace is essential. In other words, it requires feeling rather than thinking. Setsuna closes his eyes again and tries to calm himself. He wonders if he is overthinking and realizes that he has constantly been pushing himself to grow stronger as quickly as possible because he cannot afford to lose any comrades again. He tries to push away the distractions, but his mind remains unsettled. Seeing this, the headmaster places his hands on Setsuna's shoulders and advises him not to rush. He explains that it took him 3 years to achieve harmony with nature, and Setsuna still has 5 years before the evil god descends. Setsuna, however, believes that waiting that long may be too late because the apostles could attack at any time. The headmaster, unfamiliar with the apostles, asks for clarification. Setsuna explains that they are said to originate from the same otherworld as the evil god, and each one possesses special abilities that are very different from ordinary magic. He then reveals that Leo, who used magic disintegration, is undoubtedly one of them. Before his regression, Setsuna had faced only one apostle, and even then he barely managed due to the advantage of long-range magic. The apostles were overwhelmingly strong. Hearing this, the headmaster realizes Setsuna is referring to the 12 dark powers recorded in the Silverlock legend. Setsuna fears that others like Leo may be hiding elsewhere in the world. The headmaster reassures him that he understands his concerns, but warns that emotional chaos can lead to dangerous decisions, so Setsuna must not rush. The headmaster then remembers something important and tells Setsuna that he may gain valuable insight during the upcoming joint training in the dungeon. Since Setsuna has not heard about it yet, the headmaster explains that Professor Lionel will share the details later. He advises Setsuna that the training will give him a chance to surpass his current limits, but the journey will be extremely demanding. Therefore, Setsuna must first rest his body properly. The headmaster adds that, in due time, Setsuna will also encounter a surprising development. The scene then shifts to Leo, who opens a large door to enter a room and greets the others, apologizing for being late. Several other apostles like Leo are present. One of them approaches Leo, remarking that he has the nerve to keep everyone waiting, and asks whether Leo, whose real name is Hayako, has a death wish. This individual is the 10th Dark Apostle, Zagan. Another apostle, who is hanging from the terrace like a bat, cheerfully greets Hayako and points out that Leo failed to eliminate a single student and acted independently during the incident. On top of that, he was injured and forced to retreat. The Joker-like man then asks how Leo intends to take responsibility. This man is the 9th Dark Apostle, Pucker. Hearing their complaints, Leo apologizes to Pucker, explaining lightheartedly that he simply couldn't keep his composure in front of his best friend. Leo is ranked 12th among the Dark Apostles. Seeing Leo smile, Zagan tells him to wipe the grin off his face because it is irritating. Leo immediately becomes serious and glares back at Zagan. Just as the two are about to clash, another Dark Apostle intervenes, reminding them that as apostles, they should behave in a manner worthy of their great leader's vision. He questions if they still fail to understand that. This apostle is Satanakia, the 2nd Dark Apostle. Satanakia releases his magical presence, instantly intimidating both Zagan and Leo, leaving Leo deeply impressed. He approaches them, ready to resolve the situation, and asks Leo to give his personal report. However, Zagan interrupts, urging Satanakia to wait. He argues that Leo has caused a major problem and asks how they should deal with him, offering to handle Leo himself if he becomes a hindrance. Pucker adds that the task of eliminating someone is more entertaining for him, so he is willing to take it on. But Satanakia dismisses both suggestions, stating that there is no need because he has already arranged for someone to take on the mission. He is confident that this person will succeed. A few days after the exchange matches, the students return to their classes, including Setsuna. During class, Layla approaches Setsuna and asks if he is feeling well enough to attend lessons again. Setsuna confirms that his condition is stable and that theory classes should be manageable. Even so, Layla appears concerned because he keeps getting injured, even after the final battle, making her suspect that something must have happened. Setsuna remains silent. During their spirit magic training, the headmaster had informed Setsuna that they still cannot reveal the existence of the evil god or the apostles to the public. Even he can only share limited information with a few trustworthy professors. For now, he has entrusted them with the search for Leo and the academy's security. Setsuna agreed, and the headmaster then told him that spirit magic training would be postponed temporarily. Reflecting on this, Setsuna apologizes to Layla for worrying her and assures her that he is fine. Immediately after speaking, he feels pain throughout his body, but his thoughts remain fixed on recovering quickly and becoming stronger. With determination, Setsuna slams his hand on the table, while Layla watches quietly. Professor Lionel enters the classroom and instructs everyone to take their seats. He then announces that he will explain the upcoming joint training program for the various facilities. Setsuna smiles when he hears this. The students ask for details, and Professor Lionel explains that the training will be conducted together with other departments. While exchange matches are typically used to learn each faculty's combat style, this time the purpose is to work together, understand their individual limits, and break through those limits. Listening to the explanation, Setsuna thinks that it sounds like an effort to strengthen teamwork among the mages. Professor Lionel then uses a projector to reveal that the training will take place in the first class underground dungeon. Because of the danger involved, participation will be determined through candidacy. The training is scheduled to begin in 2 weeks, so until then, Professor Lionel instructs his students to prepare themselves thoroughly. Setsuna quietly clenches his fist, realizing that this is the joint training the headmaster mentioned earlier, but he knows he must heal his injuries first. After class, Layla and Setsuna leave together, and Layla asks if he would like to have dinner with her. She cheerfully reminds him that they both need to eat well and recover before the training begins. Setsuna likes the idea and agrees to join her. As they walk, other students begin murmuring about Setsuna, recognizing him as the winner of the exchange match and praising him for his impressive performance, especially considering he used close combat techniques. The girls at the academy also start whispering excitedly, saying they have become fans of him. Hearing this, Layla points out that everyone is now talking about him, even though those same students were mocking him just a few days ago. Setsuna agrees with her. Suddenly, another student with golden hair approaches them and points at Setsuna, asking if he is the close combat mage who won the match. Setsuna confirms it, and many nearby students recognize the newcomer as Carl from the Noble's Salon. They begin whispering about rumors that Carl will join the army after graduation. Carl then informs Setsuna that he is inviting him to join his salon. Setsuna is unfamiliar with the term. Carl explains that the salon is a social gathering for nobility, not to be confused with a hair salon, and that only mages from distinguished noble bloodlines are usually allowed to join. However, Carl claims he is willing to make an exception specifically for Setsuna. Carl continues, stating that having the winner of the exchange match in their salon would ensure their group faces no obstacles. The girls nearby seem delighted to see Carl personally scouting Setsuna. Carl adds that, as the winner, Setsuna needs strong connections. Then, he gestures toward Layla and says that Setsuna's future would be ruined if he continued spending time with what Carl calls unworthy company. Hearing this, Setsuna immediately refuses the offer and begins to walk away. Carl and the surrounding students are shocked. Setsuna calmly explains that magical ability has nothing to do with noble bloodlines, and that Carl is the one wasting his time. The nearby girls laugh as Carl is unexpectedly humbled by Setsuna's response. Carl, turning red with anger, draws his weapon and demands to know how Setsuna dares to speak to a noble that way, and charges towards Setsuna with his sword, but Layla quickly intervenes. She grabs Carl's arm and firmly tells him that personal fights are not allowed in the academy, then pointedly asks who here is failing to follow the rules. Carl struggles, but cannot break free from her grip. Two other students rush over, worried, and then escort Carl away, saying they will remember this incident. Carl angrily mutters that he will report everything to his father. Layla finally exhales in relief and turns to smile at Setsuna. Setsuna, meanwhile, thinks about how much stronger Layla has become compared to before. However, their moment is interrupted again, this time by Carol. She walks over, and Setsuna expresses that he is glad she is doing well. Carol replies that she is fine thanks to him, and, nervously, she tells Setsuna that she wants to properly show her gratitude, so she invites him to her room. Watching Carol's expression, Layla starts wondering what exactly is going on. Everything becomes clear when they reach Carol's private room, and she warmly welcomes them, revealing that she plans to cook a meal for Setsuna to thank him for saving her life. She asks for a moment to finish preparing. Setsuna, Drago, and Layla enter the room, with Drago and Layla curiously looking around. Setsuna humbly tells Carol that she didn't need to go through all this trouble, but Carol insists and asks him to wait while she gets everything ready. Hearing that, Layla decides to help Carol as well, knowing that preparing a full meal alone would be difficult. The moment Carol hears this, she quickly brings out another apron for Layla and thanks her sincerely for offering to help. Since Drago doesn't understand why he was included, he asks Carol in confusion. She happily replies that she invited him simply because the more, the merrier. After that, Carol and Layla head to the kitchen. While looking around, Layla comments that she has never seen anything like this and didn't even know certain foods were beneficial for recovery. Carol explains that these dishes are known as recovery foods. The two girls happily giggle as they cook together, while Setsuna listens from the hallway. In reality, he is deep in thought about what the headmaster told him earlier. According to the headmaster, Carol has almost no memories connected to Leo. It might be temporary amnesia caused by shock, or Leo may have altered her memories. Fortunately, she is safe for now, but someone could come after her again. Drago suddenly interrupts Setsuna's thoughts, asking what he is thinking about so seriously. Setsuna snaps out of it in surprise, and Drago gently tells him that his biggest flaw is taking everything too seriously. He suggests that Setsuna relax and enjoy moments like this. When Setsuna repeats the line to himself, he pauses, looking down as the words sink in. Suddenly, loud crashing noises echo from the kitchen, followed by Carol exclaiming to Layla that she added too much of something. More clattering continues, and Setsuna and Drago exchange puzzled looks. Setsuna wonders if they are actually training in the kitchen because it sounds almost explosive. Drago replies that there is no way they would do that in a kitchen, but then Carol emerges and asks Drago to help them for a moment. Drago agrees and heads in, only to find that he must wear a frilly maid-style apron to assist them. Confused, he asks if he really has to wear it, and Carol apologizes, explaining that those are the only aprons she owns. Drago finally gives in and joins them, and the three continue cooking with cheerful energy while Setsuna smiles to himself, listening from the hallway. After a while, they finish preparing all the dishes and place them on the table. Carol happily tells Setsuna to enjoy the meal. Setsuna is genuinely pleased and pulls out his chair, while Layla nervously admits that they got a little carried away and ended up making too much. Setsuna compliments the food, saying it looks wonderful, and decides that since they worked so hard, he should try to finish everything. He picks up his spoon and uses a physical boost to stretch his stomach slightly so he can eat more without feeling sick. Then Setsuna begins eating the dishes one by one. Worried, Layla comes over and asks if he is forcing himself to eat, but Setsuna reassures her that everything tastes great. He then tries an egg soup and really enjoys it, asking who made it because of its amazing umami flavor. Drago comes over holding a large bowl of the same soup, proudly saying that it seems Setsuna likes the dish he made and encourages him to have more since plenty is left. Setsuna happily agrees and asks for another serving. Hearing this, Carol is shocked and can't believe that Setsuna prefers Drago's cooking over hers. Setsuna chuckles as Carol reacts dramatically, and he thinks about how nice it feels to spend a peaceful day like this once in a while. The group continues eating together, chatting happily and enjoying the warm, lively atmosphere. But Setsuna is deep in thought, reflecting on his previous life. Their once peaceful world had been destroyed by the evil god Vidark, who took that peace away from them. This time, Setsuna has fully resolved not to let history repeat itself and vows that he will not lose for a second time. After 2 weeks, the day of the joint training in the dungeon finally arrives. All participating students gather together, chatting excitedly. Drago places his hand on Setsuna's shoulder and happily comments that Setsuna looks to be in top condition. Setsuna smiles and agrees, saying it is all thanks to the healing foods Drago prepared for him over the past few days, and then thanks him. Drago replies that it is nothing, since they are close combat comrades, and reminds Setsuna that if he stops eating recovery foods regularly, their effects will fade. Setsuna smiles again, thinking about how relieved he feels knowing that he and Drago are on the same team this time, meaning he can trust Drago to watch his back. While they are talking, 2 students approach them, and the male student apologizes for making Setsuna and Drago wait. Drago turns around and realizes they are upperclassmen. The male student introduces himself as Mifyun, a 3rd year from the formation department, and then introduces the female student beside him as Yuzaha, who is in the same class. Yuzaha lowers her robe and greets them politely. Drago introduces himself as Drago Okred from the Close Combat Department, and Setsuna introduces himself as well. Hearing Setsuna's name, Mifyun becomes very surprised, realizing he is the winner of the exchange match. He compliments Setsuna for looking dependable, and then says the same to Drago before telling them that they will all need to work together as a team. After that, Mifyun returns to Yuzaha, and Drago commenting that Mifyun seems like a cheerful person. Setsuna agrees. When Mifyun walks back, Yuzaha playfully remarks that Mifyun seems unusually gentle when speaking with them, and asks if he's trying to lower their guard. Mifyun asks if he really looked like that, and then shows a bit of his real personality, suggesting that his earlier attitude was only temporary. Professor Giovanni arrives near the dungeon entrance and informs all the students that the joint training will now begin since everyone has arrived. He introduces himself as Giovanni from the Formation Magic Department and explains that this training is a coordinated exercise between the Formation Department and the Close Combat Department. He then informs them that the dungeon they will be entering is called the Ruin of the Sealed Demon, which contains many ancient monsters and undead beings, making it at least a 1-star dungeon. During the joint training, the students must defeat these monsters in real combat. Professor Giovanni then summons a bracelet and shows it to everyone, explaining that their achievements inside the dungeon will be recorded using this bracelet of memory, and that loot dropped by monsters will count as bonus points. The team with the highest score will receive medals from the Academy. Additionally, any individual who earns more than 100 points will have the opportunity to join the training of the kingdom's Magus Battalion. Setsuna is thrilled to hear this, remembering how much he misses the members of the Magus Battalion, many of whom were not only the strongest mages in the kingdom, but also his comrades in his previous life. If he can join their training again, he might even be able to meet them once more. Professor Giovanni hands out the bracelets and announces that they will not be entering the deeper floors of the dungeon, since there may be monsters far beyond what they can handle. Because of this risk, he instructs everyone not to go too deep. In case of an emergency, they can inject mana into the bracelet to teleport back to the entrance. After wearing the bracelet, Setsuna sets his goal for 100 personal points, but quickly decides that he wants to reach 200 instead. Drago announces the same goal out loud at the same time, and both of them look at each other in surprise before laughing. Drago smiles and says he is looking forward to seeing Setsuna achieve it, and Setsuna replies that Drago is right. Professor Giovanni then asks if everyone is ready and notices that the students are fully motivated and prepared to begin. Suddenly, Drago and Setsuna release bursts of mana, and the impact shocks the nearby students, even catching the attention of Yuzaha and Mifyun, who begin analyzing them with interest. The moment Professor Giovanni announces the start of the training, Drago and Setsuna rush into the dungeon ahead of everyone else, leaving the other students momentarily stunned behind them. Both Drago and Setsuna run toward the dungeon, while Setsuna thinks about the 1-star dungeon known as the Ruin of the Sealed Demon. It is a ruin created by an ancient civilization, and Setsuna has heard that many of its areas remain unexplored. The monsters inside are hostile toward outsiders who enter as intruders. Setsuna tells Drago that even with the teleportation magic they have, this will be a very dangerous training exercise. While running, Drago tells Setsuna to look at the open passage ahead. They step inside and take the stairs down to the next floor, where they discover a surprisingly vast underground space. Setsuna never expected such a large chamber to exist beneath the surface. As he looks around, he notices ancient vegetation and wonders whether there had once been an entire civilization within these ruins. Setsuna remembers what the headmaster said, that this training may be essential for future missions. Right now, Setsuna's goals are mastering spirit magic and earning as many points as possible during this exercise, so he plans to take advantage of every opportunity he can. Other students gradually arrive as well. Mifune, arriving third with Yuzuha, looks exhausted and comments on how fast Setsuna and Drago are. Yuzuha then notices something and points it out to the team. Meanwhile, other student groups are discussing which direction to take. Setsuna's party observes the scenery ahead, while another group chooses to go right because their leader believes the other path is an obvious trap. Hearing that, Mifune mutters that the leader must be foolish. He believes that in joint training, taking the deeper path is the correct choice, and then points ahead, telling Setsuna and the others that they will go that way. Setsuna agrees that Mifune is not wrong, since this is a point-based competition. But as he observes the area more closely, he suddenly becomes more serious. Mifune asks if something is bothering him, and Setsuna approaches the wall, stomping against it as he announces that it is a fake wall. All three of them are shocked. Drago asks if he is certain, and Setsuna confirms it, explaining that the vegetation looks suspiciously out of place, so he suspects a large room behind it. Mifune is confused and says it could just be a coincidence, but Setsuna continues explaining as Drago punches the wall to break it open. Setsuna adds that he can hear the sound of wind from the other side. With a single strike, the wall collapses, revealing a new hidden path. Drago and Setsuna immediately rush inside, while Mifune and Yuzuha follow them. Mifune compliments Setsuna's impressive insight and Drago's strength. Then, in a quieter voice, he tells Yuzuha that thanks to this discovery, they will be able to earn many points. They continue forward and begin climbing a long staircase whose destination is unknown. Suddenly, a large bolt shoots down from above, but Drago skillfully uses a mana blade to destroy it. Setsuna comments that Drago seems to be in high spirits, and Drago agrees, saying that if they show how strong they are, people will finally recognize the value of close combat mages. He also adds that he does not intend to lose to Setsuna. They both smile, sharing a moment of mutual respect, but Setsuna's expression sharpens as he suddenly senses an attack from behind. He instinctively moves to dodge an arrow fired from a hidden trap. Setsuna immediately rushes toward the source of the traps and take down the traps to stop further attacks. Drago realizes that not only their reaction time, but also their perception is on an entirely different level. Drago then tells Setsuna that they should start clearing the traps to make things easier for the third-year students. But suddenly he notices a treasure chest and tells Setsuna to look. Setsuna turns and sees a chest sitting on the ground, but before either of them can act, a surge of blue mana flashes past them and pulls the chest away. It turns out to be Mifune's spell. He claims the chest for himself. With a sly smile, Mifune thanks Drago for helping him get the chest. After obtaining it, Mifune receives 15 points. Drago is stunned, while Setsuna remains silent, observing the situation carefully. Drago angrily clenches his fist, frustrated that their own teammates are competing against each other in a battle of speed. He tells Mifune that he will not lose next time. They continue exploring the dungeon, moving forward while carefully stopping the traps, and finally Drago discovers another chest. However, just like before, Mifune uses his mana to seize the chest before Drago's hand can even reach it. The chest lands on the ground, and Mifune claiming 15 more points, bringing his total to 30. Drago becomes even more upset, knowing that he still has no points at all. They press forward through the dungeon, with Drago handling the traps along the way. When undead monsters suddenly appear, Drago is ready to deliver the finishing blow, but Mifune intervenes again and steals the final hit, gaining yet another set of points. Mifune now reaches 40 points, while Drago remains at 0. After some time, Drago finally manages to earn 10 points by defeating multiple monsters on his own. Yuzuha acquires 30 points, and Mifune reaches 55 points after stealing another chest from Drago. As time passes, they reach a large open space. Drago is visibly exhausted, while Setsuna is clearly irritated by what has been happening. Yuzuha watches them with a smile, and Mifune turns back, telling Drago that although he acknowledges Drago's strength, Drago lacks vision, and at this rate he will never catch up. His words only fuel Drago's anger further. Setsuna, now holding 25 points, walks forward and confronts Mifune. He reminds him that the discussion about sharing rewards fairly is an essential part of dungeon exploration, yet Mifune has been taking points from his own junior. Setsuna demands to know if this is truly Mifune's method. Hearing this, Yuzuha laughs and turns to Mifune, amused that Setsuna said such a thing. Mifune smirks and admits that, in a sense, it is exactly his approach. He shows his true nature, mocking them by saying that he is not as foolish as someone who only trains their body. He claims that Drago and Setsuna keep talking about rules, yet humans naturally use others to reach their goals. He finishes by taunting them. If they are upset, they should try to do the same, assuming they even can. Setsuna observes Mifune carefully, realizing just how cunning he is. With 2 different formation magic circles, Mifune can teleport with ease, catching people off guard, an extremely convenient ability, though not without its flaws. Setsuna also begins to suspect Yuzuha. Even though they have been fighting monsters for a long time, she seems unaffected by her point total, which raises the question of whether she has hidden motives of her own. They continue exploring and soon reach another path. Mifune is excited and tells Yuzuha that they need just a little more effort before they will completely clear this section. Yuzuha smiles back. At this point, Yuzuha has 50 points, Mifune has 80 points, Setsuna has 35 points, and Drago still has 10 points. The moment they enter the next room, Setsuna senses that something is off. Meanwhile, Mifune immediately uses his magic to take the chest in the room, but suddenly his magic shifts into a sinister blue glow, surprising him. Without realizing the danger, Mifune keeps forcing his spell to pull the chest toward him, even as Setsuna warns him to stop. All at once, an overwhelming surge of mana bursts out of the chest. Setsuna is stunned as he realizes that despite this being only a 1-star dungeon, the presence inside the chest is on a completely different level. The undead being that emerges from the chest releases an overwhelming surge of mana, and Setsuna immediately realizes something is terribly wrong. A presence of this magnitude should be impossible within a 1-star dungeon. Setsuna becomes even more alarmed when he recognizes the creature. It is the Undead King, the monarch of the dead. He recalls hearing rumors that the dark flame the Undead King breathes can trap anyone struck by it in a nightmare-like state. The Undead King begins to speak, declaring that anyone who dares disturb his slumber will pay for it with their life. Drago is shocked, astonished that an undead creature can communicate. Setsuna quickly pushes Drago back, warning him that this monster is far too dangerous and that he will handle it. He instructs Drago to grab Mifune and escape immediately. However, Drago ignores the order. Instead, he smiles, clenching his fists and asking Setsuna how many points he thinks Drago will earn if he defeats the Undead King. Setsuna is stunned by Drago's sudden shift in attitude. Before he can respond, the Undead King begins chanting and launches an attack straight toward Mifune. Setsuna intercepts it instantly, and Drago leaps forward to strike the Undead King with a punch. But the Undead King reacts with incredible speed, summoning a magic circle right in Drago's path. Drago is shocked that the Undead King can cast from such a distance. He takes a direct hit from the spell, causing Setsuna to shout his name, but fortunately Drago's mana guard absorbs the impact and protects him. The Undead King continues the assault, releasing more magic circles in an attempt to eliminate them completely. Setsuna notices the multiple overlapping formations being cast at once. With this level of power and intelligence, the Undead King is undoubtedly a 4-star monster. The Undead King attacks Setsuna from every direction, but Setsuna skillfully counters each strike. To make matters worse, the creature suddenly shifts its target toward Mifune. Setsuna is startled and shouts at Mifune to wake up. Drago immediately steps in, using his mana sword to deflect the incoming attacks and protect him. Mifune finally regains consciousness, completely confused as he sees Drago standing in front of him. Drago reaches out a hand and tells him to get up. Mifune accepts the hand and rises. At that moment, a magic circle appears beneath Yuzuha, who has been quietly observing everything without reacting. Just as the attacks are about to hit her, Setsuna swiftly rescues her. After landing safely, he asks if she is all right. She smiles calmly, confirming that she is fine and thanking him, showing no fear or concern. Setsuna senses something unusual in her behavior, but wonders if he is simply overthinking it. He quickly refocuses and calls out to Drago, who is still clashing with the undead king's magic. Drago turns toward him as Setsuna pulls several bracelets from his arm and tells Drago to try them now. Drago grins, saying he was thinking the same thing. Mifune smirks, saying he has no idea what they are planning, but it has nothing to do with him. He decides he will simply collect the points and leave as soon as possible. Drago eyes Mifune, asking if he plans to pull the same trick again. Mifune startles and nervously insists that he won't, claiming he would never betray the person who just saved his life. Internally, however, he smirks, thinking that at least he won't do so for now. Drago then equips the bracelet as well, declaring that he will not let Mifune steal points from him this time. Setsuna prepares his own equipment too, recalling the moment he fought Leo. The final blow failed because his charge was not as powerful as it needed to be. That experience taught him the importance of solid fundamentals, and now, facing an opponent of this level, Setsuna decides it is time to rely on every bit of help he can get. Setsuna and Drago inform Professor Lionel that they have completed all the core training. Setsuna then asks if there is anything else they can do to become even stronger. Hearing their request, Professor Lionel feels he has no choice but to assist them. He places a bracelet on the table, explaining that he had suspected it might soon be time for them to use it. Curious, Setsuna asks what it is. Professor Lionel replies that it is a magically weighted band. If they wear these bands during training, they will gain significantly more strength once the bands are removed. However, he warns that Setsuna is still not fully healed, so he must avoid overexertion. Professor Lionel explains that this is an old-school, brute force training method and advises them to use it wisely. Both Setsuna and Drago smile and thank him. Feeling ready, Setsuna decides it is time to remove the bands they have been wearing since that day. He takes off all the bands, and due to their heavy weight, they fall heavily on the ground. Mifune is stunned, realizing they had been training under those conditions all this time. With the bands removed, the undead king attacks again, but Setsuna and Drago are now faster, empowered by their physical boost skills. Setsuna expertly counters all the attacks while Drago stands firm, holding his ground against the incoming strikes. Drago then prepares a powerful kick at the undead king. Drago's strike lands, shattering the king's crown, yet the monster remains standing. It grabs Drago's foot and launches a magic circle attack from the ground. Drago shouts that the block he performed last time worked, but now it is too late. Acting quickly, Setsuna arrives and delivers a precise kick to the undead king's face. Mifune is shocked, marveling at their skill as mana erupts around them. Both Setsuna and Drago pull back, and they finally able to defeat the undead king. Together, they earn 50+ points for defeating the creature. Drago comments that the reward split in half because of their combined effort. Meanwhile, Mifune is intimidated, wondering if this truly reflects the full extent of their abilities, as he has never seen a magic student anywhere near as strong. Setsuna then glances back, concerned for Yuzuha, only to find she is no longer there. Suddenly, an earthquake shakes the ground beneath Mifune, causing the floor to crumble. As Mifune nearly falls into a pit, Setsuna rescues him. Looking into the pit, they see numerous, unusual, undead creatures. Drago wonders what they are, but the creatures immediately turn hostile. Setsuna shouts for everyone to run while taking down the undead monsters with his mana sword, astonished at the chaos occurring in what should have been a simple one-star dungeon.